Sometimes you dive into another world. It is unknown how, unexpectedly, as fate gives incredible power and opens the path to brilliant adventures. The events seem to be unfolding in a proven scenario. The lucky one almost instantly becomes a legendary hero. Once, in the heart of the ordinary village, a little boy with an unusual gift of earthly magic touched the old tile, and immediately in his eyes the stone resumed his integrity, shining as if a new one. The joyful faces surrounded the boy on all sides. One of the men grabbed him by the hand and, without holding back the delight, proclaimed that with such a gift he would now be much easier to trade. He did not belong to those who were able to erase dangerous opponents from the face of the earth with one wave of the sword, and he did not fall out. However, his heart was found by those who could make it happier, and that's what he saw the true meaning of his actions. The gaze thrown towards a man was accompanied by a quiet proposal to return home. Meanwhile, a weird satellite, holding up, barely hid a surprise. How in general it is possible that this path was able to lay someone so young, a 6-year-old child. But despite the unexpected discovery, the whole essence of the main character came through simple actions. In his heart, he lived sincere kindness. The story will touch the young man who has drawn strength and wisdom from the memory of his own past embodiment. His name was Michio Tsuchita, 35 winters behind her shoulders. The usual day off came to an end, and tired, he returned home, completing another shift for work. On the empty street after the workers, a female cry suddenly arrived, which tore the peace of the evening. Not the slightest idea that is around and why the police are here. Only this question was spinning. The cold thrill rolled up with a spine, forcing him to miss the fear. Bright flashes emerged in the mind of memories of those spooky moments when the icy horror squeezed his heart. But this time, the fear covered his head with new power, too deep, too inappropriate at this moment. The need to escape immediately became obvious, but the child hid inside, and the foreigner lost control of himself. Time did not give rest. The voice of the killer, tense and sharp, literally heard as a sentence. There was only 1 minute. The despair escaped out, and Michio Starhead rushed to the killer, desperately choosing a girl from his cold hugs. Together they fell to the floor when the murder was cold that time had fallen. From now on it was open to freedom. The words did not break from the mouth of Michio, because in the next moment the look faded into the brilliant blade of a knife, which was inevitably approaching. Without a single shadow, the knife came from the boy just in his back. The man did. The consciousness of the protagonist flowed rapidly, and a stranger in a panic was grossly commanded not to interfere. It was at this moment that the police rushed forward, grabbed the attacker firmly, and strictly ordered him not to resist and remain silent. However, the attacker continued to be stubbornly. He persistently demanded freedom, turning even to the omnipotent Marigasa with a plea for help. The state of health was relentlessly deteriorating when a hearty "thank you" from the mother of the rescued girl came to hearing. Squeezing his eyelids, the young man suddenly caught a stranger, unfamiliar sound of voice, not a female timbre. Forced to think about where this presence came from and what it means. For the second time, a familiar voice is heard. With deep gratitude, he turns to him. The name of Kai is heard, which gently calls and calls for it. In the invisible penetration, women's words sound sincerely. She begs not to let herself fight and stay together. The eyelids shuddered, and a stranger, amazing beauty of a woman appeared before her eyes. The mustached man, blossoming in a smile, gladly reported that Mr. Cain was finally conscious, and hurried to immediately announce the owner immediately. The world, with his unusual people, unfamiliar things, and someone else's clothes, seemed to be a complete secret. He had no imagination where he got. The head was literally cracking from unbearable pain, and the endless flow of other people's memories and knowledge continued to be baked. However, a clear awareness of the chaos came in mind. Cain Rose is his name, and he was born the 4th son in Vakanta Rose. Since then, a long time has passed, and it seems that Micho's soul has already found a new life in a foreign world. The boy's memoirs come to life when he was only 5 years old. Then Lydia, the noble first lady of the Gay Rose house, leaning gently over him, gently asking if something evil happened. After the death of Cain's mother, Lenora, who was taken by a serious illness, it was this woman who became a real support for him. Daily care and sincere care gradually replaced the maternal heat in his heart, which he needed so sharply. A reminder of a recent fall from the stairs and the danger that was almost worth the life made the boy get up. Rejecting anxiety with a simple shoulder movement, he only assured everyone in his good well-being. The woman's fingers gently touched his forehead, and in her voice were the notes of relief. The appearance did not cause anxiety at all. Smiling, the guy sincerely confessed in the unrestrained famine. As if reading his thoughts, the girl took care of it in advance. There was already a plate of fragrant, still warm porridge on the table. The gaze immediately lingered on the dish. Her appearance awakened a great appetite. Taking a spoon, the man lifted her to the boy, cheerfully joked about the fact that he would fly a plane. Shyness engulfed the hero, and he hastened to assure Lydia he would handle it well. Earl adherently argued about his own weakness, and with her request not to make the resistance to argue, Cain only left to obey. Blushing from embarrassment, he uncertainly opened his mouth. The gentle touch on the head and sincere praise testified to her gratitude for his efforts. However, the careful look did not hide anxiety. After awakening, the guy seemed to be restrained and closed, although he had previously distinguished openness and mischievousness. Not knowing anything, the guy decided to take a baby. With such thought, rapidly ran to the woman and exclaimed, "Mom!" Conveniently settling on it, Heroes pressed tightly against the soft, seductive breasts, and the girl, exploding with cheerful laughter, joked, calling him a corrupted desert. Suddenly, Alice Senros, the eldest daughter of a respected family, slightly bowing her head, the girl turned to Lydia. "Mom," politely asked for permission to go to the room. It is not the first time that Lydia warned the arches. It is forbidden to open the door without permission. However, today she broke her own rule, allowing the girl to enter. Without a moment, the girl ran up to Cain with anxiety in her eyes. He was hot with his well-being and convincingly insisted that he immediately rested. The smile was on the face of Lydia, which caught a slight embarrassment of the girl. The reason for this reaction remained a mystery to Elise, but Lydia carefully remembered how deeply Alice was worried about Cain all this time, and the cheeks of the young lady suddenly rose. The alarm for Cain prompted Astar to make sure that his friend was all right, and to make sure that he had not been ill with some illness. The cold touch of Aristara easily lay on Cain's forehead, and instantly surprised the young man's eyes. No fever. On the cheeks, Cain played a soft smile. The touch brought a pleasant coolness that spilled inside a strange comfort. 3 brothers and older sister were distinguished in the family. All of them were depicted from legends about beauty, striking and unearthly like. The room included Luc Senrus, Viscount Senruses, and casting a close look at Alice warned, if she does not hold back her emotions, Cain is unlikely to get together with thoughts and calm down. It was amazed at how much the son changed. The face was lightened, a look full of life. From the mouth of the priest, the news sounded. The baptismal rite for the boy will take place next week. But Cain remained embarrassed. The meaning of the words remained a mystery to him. The native possessions of our hero were not impressed with the scope for the noble state, a small piano city which lived no more than 5,000 souls. While ordinary baronet usually brings together more than 10,000 people, which is almost twice the number of the inhabitants of his land. In this world, all children at the age of 5 are baptized, during which the Lord gives everyone a unique gift. Each child had a chance to give a gift, because God experienced the strength and talents of all without exception. All the subsequent life of a person was determined by what gift was destined to receive from childhood. The idea that the fate will be woven at 5 years did not rest the main character. Everything that was before remained far behind, because the current existence was strikingly different from the past. But even in the new world, Michio was unable to get the grace of fate, the trials, and continued to pursue it. Once in this world, quite unexpectedly, the hero remained without the slightest idea of his own destiny. The irregularity of the future tickled the nerves and at the same time fascinated, igniting a thirst for adventures. The lights of admiration broke out in his eyes. The idea that this place is truly amazing penetrated into the heart, filling his confidence. A new life here promises to be full of joy. Translated from another world, Cain was facing the luxurious palette of gifts. Boundless power, magic, power over all the elements of the world. All of this promised to become the keys to his military grandeur. The anticipation of new opportunities tickled the soul and lured to grandiose accomplishments. The imagination has already drew fascinating pictures of the future, where each choice opens the way to unknown peaks. Together with his family, the hero entered a magnificent temple, which he fascinated the lag instantly. Turning to Lydia and Alice, The man politely asked them to stay inside and wait a little. Everyone was eagerly awaited that Cain would get a truly rare and useful skill, and Alice wished him success with warmth in his voice. Cain stepped to the hall with a confident step, and Bishop Siston met him with a respectful bow, solemnly saying, "I congratulate you, my Lord Cain." Cain suggested that the bishop was going to hold a short baptism. The next request was to close his eyes, plunging into prayer. A barely young man did everything as a familiar female voice was heard in silence, which he was happy to say. He finally got his destination. The eyes opened, and before the look, an endless, dazzling void opened. Angel with unfolded wings appeared among this. The awareness, where he found himself, came not immediately. Only when the heavenly being spoke that it was a world of gods. The guy froze with surprise. The goddess of the earth itself appeared in front of him, one of the greatest creatures of this world. The angel immediately noted Cain's sharp mind, and the young man was even more surprised, realizing that she was reading his thoughts like a book. The question sounded, "Does a young man be remembered for his farewell minutes on earth?" In his mind, a tragic event pops up blurry. Death was painful when he desperately rushed to defend the defenseless baby. The light touch of the angel hidden in his hands, deep gratitude. Her look glowed with sincerity. The girl Cain saved was especially important for the angel herself. If the defender did not appear at that moment, the troubles would not have passed her. A warm smile shone on her face. She thanked the boys for her help. Cain did not resist, and said enthusiastically, "Who in the goddess are gentle, fragile hands?" Widely spreading his hands, he assured that it is not necessary to worry. The main thing is that nothing happened to it. But one thing did not rest. If there is indeed an invisible connection between them, why did the goddess remain powerless and could not cope on its own? There was no objections to its own power. Interference on its part could be decomposed of the land and the whole world. So she thanked Cain with his heart for his determination and courage, which remained alive. The news that its own existence has affected the whole world filled the soul with unspeakable joy. It is this desire, to make sure that the years lived were not in vain, it has always been burning in it. Taking the initiative in his own hands, the angel promised to resolve the misunderstanding, telling about Cain's condition. Seeing the dream screen of characteristics, joy covered it completely and completely. At the same time, the faces of the goddess expressed no less surprise. It was struck by the fact that the young man had already mastered a number of skills. The strange changes have become unnoticed by the hero. As soon as the maternal life of Lanor has gone away, a new feeling settled inside. Only now did that moment broke out in memory. When he said goodbye, holding his native hand, his own palm flared light. It was then that the ability of the expedient magic of healing was inherited from his mother. Choke this moment in your heart. The angel was called. If everything is true, in response to salvation, she wants to give him 3 unusual abilities. Suddenly, they had a roulette, and a girl with a gambling suggested that the boy experience good luck by clicking on the lever. The confused look of the young man slid on a strange roulette, which suddenly stood before his eyes. Not for a moment, having understood its purpose, he involuntarily linked everything with excitement and unknown games of fate. The feeling gradually suggested how this mechanism was arranged, but the real shock was the awareness. He was not allowed to choose here. Former residents of the world often chose abilities that can change the balance of strength, so they decided to introduce a random distribution of skills. The gods, however, only increased the number of migration, and the angel, meanwhile, with anxiety, hoped that she had not caused him serious pain. The girl came to the fortune wheel with a deep sigh. The burden of divine responsibilities was not easy for her. Mentally, she turned to a powerful artifact, begging her to give her the most perfect abilities. The finger touched the button lightly, and before his eyes, the choice unfolded. The magic of the earth, the boundless magic, and the mysterious magic circles opened their capabilities. Cain tried to grasp the meaning of this miracle as a sincere surprise flashed in the face of the angel. The unknown magic of the earth was intrigued by Cain. It was a real power in it. The endless flow of charming energy surrounding the testing of its boundaries, and it thought, will it conquer this element if it involves all its ingenuity? Smiling widely, she noted with sarcasm that luck had long turned away from Cain. The excitement for Cain prompted her to prove herself as a true goddess of the earth. As a sign of care and support, She gave the boy part of her own magic, blessing him by the power of nature to confirm his gratitude. The warm touch of the forehead became a short but tangible blessing of the defender. From now on, having received her blessing, he opened the way to the church. Now he could pray for her. The girl carefully noted that this opportunity is extremely rare, so it will not lead his eyes and continue to monitor his actions. Cain promised to share the news and sincerely wished him success in the future. The hero did not even have time to say the words, as suddenly a patriarch set before his eyes. Only the look of the elder on Cain's status, and he immediately noticed 3 unique skills. The father of his father had no limits when the news of the blessing of the Guardi that fell to his son reached. Even with not too bright skills, the door to something bigger was opened before the main character, a chance to differ among others. Cain, unable to hide curiosity, immediately opened the window of his status to make sure whether fate is really committed to him. For this moment, Cain was just starting his journey, being on the first level and having no title. His status clearly stated, reincarnated from the ground, he received a considerable arsenal of unique abilities. Its skills included the possession of. The expression of horror distorted his face as soon as he fell on his own characteristics. An indicator of physical strength barely reached 5 units. Hands involuntarily flew to the head. To imagine what changes the fate was preparing for him, it seemed completely impossible, as if the fate itself combined the main character with the magic of the earth. Such harmony prevailed between them. Revealing his talents deeper, gradually mastering the art of creating things from clay, the guy used his amazing abilities and created a banknote that his parents had not yet seen. Unusual fiction stunned them and aroused sincere surprise. The admiration was engulfed by her father when he saw a new invention. Immediately flashed in thought. This thing will undoubtedly be useful on agriculture. A man appeared in the door, and filled with delight, announced the Lord with joyful news. Incredibly, but Mr. Cain in a wonderful way, created a field that had already given a generous harvest. No showy gesture. Everything has passed quietly and modestly, as it seems to be a balanced nature. Fate gave a chance to be born for the second time in another world and awarded 3 exceptional abilities at once. Life seemed so easy and perfect that it seemed as if happiness was going on. Surprise, almost panic, flashed in the eyes of the goddess, who gave him unusual abilities. It was impossible to accept the opinion that the situation was so tense. The gifted skills were quite commonplace, but the path that unfolded in front of him heralded a lot of trials. The concern in his father's look did not go unnoticed. He suggested that the boy return home, feeling something wrong. The bishop's office remained behind, and the guy had already stepped down the corridor, while the girl's head turned his thoughts. What talents and abilities were now endowed with Cain? In addition, she did not rest curiosity. How many skills did this character get? The father's answer was clear. Cain is able to control 2 elements, the magic of the earth and the magic of magical circles. In addition, the young man inherited the healing abilities of the Lenners. Listening to this, the guy skeptically looked at his father with his gaze, because he was sure. A real force that is dormant in his soul remains hidden from any eyes. She gripped the little one in delight, honestly praising that she managed to master 3 skills at once. Alice's reaction frankly impressed the boy, but the smart girl quickly realized his talent was inherited from his mother. Cain, however, never realized what she leads to. Alice also awakened a related magic force, familiar with the magic of the earth, about the mysterious magical circle. She had no imagination, as did the boy's father. That is why the man decided to seek help, to write a letter of Benjamin with a request to ask more about this unknown force. It seemed that none of them could think that the guy would get the power of the earth. The warm palm lay on his father's shoulder, filling it with peace. Now it is useless to worry. The answers are waiting in the estate, and if necessary, the way back is always open. With words of support, Cain's interlocutors emphasized that the rules are strict. Even the closest relatives have no right to view the status board. It should not be forgotten that even an attempt to look there is considered a great impoliteness. The consent with her father put the final point. The riddle remained unknown, even the most dear. The status of friends and colleagues has become a common thing here, moreover. Uniting for the sake of a common goal was perceived as something of course. Cain filled the desire to tell her friend about her own successes, but the laws of this world obviously dictated a completely different order of things. Trust in its own intuition has increased as real comrades appeared around, and the opportunity to direct their abilities in the right direction appeared. The idea of new adventures called forward and fascinated the imagination. Looking forward to discovering unknown horizons, Cain, just stepped on the threshold of his native estate, could not resist the desire to experience recently acquired abilities. Before the hero, the opportunity to transfer certain first-level skills into a magical circle was opened, writing them on scrolls or magical stones. However, in order to competently decompose the spell into the components and create the appropriate, having studied the magic of the earth, Cain learned to skillfully manage in order to influence the soil and sand around him. Usually, such manipulations required about tenths of his magical forces. However, faced with the simplicity and predictability of this element, the guy remained disappointed. Earth magic did not live up to his hopes. Now he has a new question. Will he ever create a golem if he mastering this mighty element perfectly? When restorative magic rises to a higher stage, it becomes possible not only a healing action, but also to cleanse the body from deadly poisons. It was Mother Lanor who opened this ability to him, so her attitude requires special delicacy. In addition to the boundless stock of magic power, the newly minted hero owned and passive skills. He was accessible to an inexhaustible source of magical energy, which he himself, not wanting, constantly absorbed from the surrounding space. Without proper control, the body persistently absorbed excess magic, creating an unusual aura around. Such a gift really impressed. And that's what Cain made it seriously think about the nature of this ability. What is this new skill? And it remained a mystery to Cain, so it did not bring true joy. Interested, the guy decided to carefully familiarize himself with the detailed description of his ability. The meticulous look of the goddess of Guardia instantly captured that Cain has not yet learned to manage magic skillfully. Therefore, she decided to restrict the boy to access to an inexhaustible source of magical forces, allowing them to use them only when he perfectly adapts this art. Hearing the advice of the goddess as soon as possible to master the art of magic, the young man grabbed his head confusedly. He did not even imagine what was meant. He perceived the special power of the goddess Guardia as the last necessary component for his goal. It was only necessary to elaborate on her blessing. A thorough study of the blessing suffered. The gift is really worthy of attention. Additional 20% to progress in the possession of the magic of the earth and the renewal art have opened new prospects, and the energy costs for these charms were reduced to 10%. As a nice bonus, the ability to understand foreign languages. Having thought about the meaning of understanding other people's languages, Cain imagined how many new knowledge is opened before him. Now, even those texts that have previously seemed unattainable. Having checked his guess and effortlessly deciphered the mysterious inscription, he addressed endless gratitude to the goddess for the gifted gift. The fascination with the very opinion of the possession of magic continued to rage inside, generating new fantasies on how to take advantage of this gift on the next occasion. The easy knock on the door is Randolph, a servant, and brought a little bit of fuss to the silence. The open door met his striking look and a sincere apology addressed to the owner. Nearby, like a shadow, appeared Alice, whose interesting look slipped the room in search of Cain. The news that the owner is expecting him in the living room was suddenly caught by the boy. Hardly restraining the excitement, he nodded briefly and assured that he would join soon. Inside Cain, a genuine interest raised. What did his father think about this time, and why does he need his presence? The indignation broke out in the eyes of the girl. The boy's indifference once after to a time removed her out of balance. She strictly demanded that Cain would finally cease to ignore her. The embarrassment of the guy enveloped, and the quiet apology broke from his mouth. In her smile, the thought was that Cain delved into the training, honing her own skills. Only now came an awareness. Immediately after arriving at the villa, Cain hurried to himself and closed the door behind him, as if trying to be alone. Alice's mischievous smile was amazed when the Butterwhile remembered how she had already made it like during the skills day. To hear it was a real surprise for the girl. The blush instantly flashed on his cheeks, and his hands shuddered a little. Surprised by Hurd, Alice could not immediately understand his words and justified that she only wanted to read the book. After delving into the fascinating pages, she did not notice how she was late for dinner. It was then that the hero realized. Her mind is as passionate about his personal aspirations as his own skills. The deep bow accompanied a genuine apology for the probable misunderstanding with Alice. Cain was surprised by her adult, restrained behavior. Alesh was intended that their unique talents are a legacy of Lenore's mother, so they should be treated with special respect and care. A barely noticeable smile illuminated his face, but the girl was surprised, without gritting what caused such joy. The boy seemed to the boy as if he had the same girl from her childhood. The atmosphere in the parent room was so tense that even the air seemed trembling. Yamat was uncertain, trying to understand what happened. The father carefully put a cup of tea on the table, inviting his son to sit nearby and start a conversation about the amazing abilities that he opened this day. Immediately emphasized how difficult it was, at the same time called Cain not to lose faith in herself. Lydia broke out with indignation, understanding his words in her own way, and cast an angry look towards Cain's father. Squeezed, the man hurried to ask, recognizing that he did not say quite well. In Cain's soul, embarrassment was born. It was difficult for him to understand the cause of sadness. In the high world of aristocrats, including in his own family, it was the abilities that opened at the time of baptism, mercilessly, and finally decided the further fate of everyone. The swordmasters, honing their skill, joined the ranks of the knightly academy, and later became the pride of the knightly orders of their kingdom or clan. Meanwhile, those whom nature awarded magical power gained education at the Academy of Magics, opening up the way to the becoming royal magicians. Persons with outstanding political abilities usually chose the way to the Royal Academy, and subsequently held the honorary positions of statesmen within their kingdom or clan. Convincing in the complete absence of the hero the martial skills of earthly magic, his father did not leave anxiety. Even raising the level did not promise any changes. Even more concern caused the mystery of magic circles, because their true mechanisms remained beyond their understanding. There was no word that would convey his thoughts, but the courage to say it out loud. The absence of faith on tomorrow broke Lydia, every time causing tears on her face. Incredibly, his parents really looked at his future with disappointment and despair. Magic skills seemed to be confused, but the belief that the skill was obtained by persistent workouts left no room for sadness. Tears swell in the eyes when the gentle hugs wrap the boy, and aloud, sincere assurances are heard. They will never leave him alone with troubles, so no reason to anxiety. Lydia and servant lowered their heads low. Their alarming views have expressed true anxiety for the guy. Once upon a time he was not mentioned with such warmth, so in any case he did not seek to upset those who showed his care for him now. Squeezing his fist, the boy with determination in his voice addressed his father with a single, special request. It is impossible to master the magic of the earth without the skills of managing charms. So the boy asked his father to master this skill. If the father had knowledge of this skill, he would certainly share valuable information with his son before. Thoughts on permission to visit the library were closed to the head of the hero. The desire to understand this mystery on his own no longer gave him rest. There was no doubt. There was no confidence in its own forces in it. Even the earthly magic, which was brought to the skill, opened unprecedented opportunities and was able to create miracles. Even if things are not planned, there is always an opportunity to cultivate a fertile field through the magic of the earth. And if you manage to master this art and recreate the healing spell, which inherited from the mother, will be the gift of treating the inhabitants of their own lands. No shadow of doubt. There is only a good future ahead. It was because of this that the guy sought to avoid unnecessary anxiety for his relatives, so his parents only watched him with surprise in his eyes. With a hard sigh, his father got up and nodded back to his son, finally acknowledging, "Perhaps it is worth giving the chance and magic of the earth." Awareness has come suddenly. The true duty of parents never makes it easy to lower their hands. Hearing the idea of Hag to join forces, his father gladly supported this proposal. He promised to send a letter to Benjamin, inviting the guest to spend the future vacations with them. Benjamin seemed to have solved the secrets of magic skill, so I was going to address him for advice and support. The delight in his voice was obvious, but living in another world is more than solid battles. The environment was striking with sincerity and care, so the young man struggled not to inflict annoyance. In his 5 years, the baby only stood on the threshold of life. This country gave people for 50 years ahead of people, so fun and adventures could be stretched for decades. McCain's thoughts have confidence. Benjamin's brother, whose name was recently mentioned by her father, is probably now being studied at the main academy. The world of magic was much more insidious than it seemed at first. Countless effort required this art of owning the elements. In the test, the mentor particularly emphasized, only unbreakable concentration and perfect possession of the magic will open the way to victory. Without this, no goblin will fall under the pressure of a young magician. In reflections on the results of the magical test, The guy still felt the tension when the next contender was already entering the arena. The statue in an instant turned into an ice floe on small fragments. At first, classmates took it as a funny trick. From this day, the name of Benjamin St. Rose has sounded as the name of the most prominent magician since the founding of the Magic Academy. The teacher did not restrain the delight, recognizing the talent of this young man remains unchanged. It has been a lot of time since the protagonist firmly decided to tire his skills tirelessly. Despite the advice to take a break and reduce the speed, Cain stubbornly ignored the temptations of inaction. The desire to act pushed him forward. Today was special. The moment came when Benjamin, who was waiting for so long, finally returned to his native walls. The father urged him to listen carefully to every word and warned, "Magic is allowed to control only after fully mastery of this art. With the slightest unauthorized attempt, Cain risks to the spell of Cain forever losing her abilities." At the same time, the guy believed all his heart to help go this difficult way under the power of Benjamin. But even in the boldest premonitions, Cain did not suggest that he would come back so much. Just at that moment, the maid was inaudibly entered the room. After a long expectation, Alice finally met Benjamin, the second son of San Rose. Cain blossomed in his sincere joy at his brother and hugged him with warmth. Benjamin's friend shone down when he greeted the children and noted in surprise how much the boy and a girl grew up. The butterfly, with special respect, showed joy, greeting young Mr. Benjamin on his return home, to which he answered Ralpha with a slight cover, "The chamber has announced the boy. Mr. Luke and Miss Lydia expect him in the living room." He pushed the rest of the children with a quiet gesture, unobtrusively reminding Ellis and Cain that they also had time to join. With a sharp mind and a tireless thirst for Ben's knowledge, he gained an incredible achievement and his 14 took the place of the student. Such an honor at the Institute of Magical Arts and Crafts has not yet fallen any such young magician. The joyful exclamations met the boy as soon as he crossed the threshold. The girls were sincerely happy about his return. One of them, not hiding the worry, wondered if the way was home without adventure. Benjamin, with calm, assured that no difficulty happened. The father of his father flashed from under his forehead. He was interested in the success of his son in his studies, and the answer sounded without any hesitation. Everything is okay in training. It is proud of a young man who in his 14 demonstrated such courage and maturity, which he just dreamed of 3.5 decades. The moment of confidence prompted the father to openly address the son with a special request. The elder brother had to care for Cain, helping him to grasp the intricacies of magical art throughout his studies. Skillfully possessing the magic of the earth and the art of recovery, Cain still had to grasp the subtleties of magic energy management. His desire to master new knowledge as soon as possible did not know the limits. At every free moment, while waiting for Benjamin, the young man tirelessly honed his skills, plunged into many experiments and tested all new spells. Smilingly smiling, his older brother with an unconcealed curiosity turned to the younger. At the dawn of Benjamin, Nadia warmed up. Maybe Cain will share significant knowledge today before classes begin. New skills have already filled the mind, mastering magical circles, the secrets of earthly magic, and the art of healing opened his way to him. Magical power still remained enough, but Cain did not deliberately delve into the details. Such nuances would only confuse the conversation. The goddess has previously promised that she would not use magic, but Cain's thoughts were still hesitant whether to raise this topic. As a result, he limited himself to 3 of his abilities, and remained silent, referring to Benjamin. Despite the prohibition on questioning about abilities, this time circumstances demanded sincerity. Benjamin sincerely hoped that Cain would tell the truth. The inquisitive Benjamin sought to find out what kind of magic the guy hides, and Cain decided that nothing wrong would happen if he honestly reveals the truth. My answer was an incredible 1,800 magic units. Stunned, the boy did not believe heard, and solemnly asked. When he became convinced of the authenticity of the said, his face froze in a sincere surprise, and his mouth involuntarily opened from surprise. The result was impressed with incredibly. The expectations were tenacious, and the figure was almost 1/6 that the guy reached with his 320 units. The older brother immediately realized the moment came to change the training strategy. The important ad was not over. From now on they will act quite differently. Immediately afterwards, a strict order came. The Cain, to bring your hand closer to him. A bracelet appeared on his hand, It was a strict order not to remove it until the mastery of magical art is perfect. In silence, with his eyes wide open, he frozen in surprise, completely dividing the state of Hawthorne. The brother covered a strange feeling as if the invisible force began to suck his energy from him. So he hurried to turn to Cain, asking to leave the device in place. It was this magical sucker that was a unique invention of Benjamin, created by his own. This device intercepted and paralyzed the sorcerer's talents of criminals, removing all the magical energy from them to the last drop. But the unique modification made it possible to subtly adjust the settings to leave the power intact when it comes to the owner. Until the owner's magical energy reached 10 units, the artifact was constantly sucking on him. Interested in the bright glow of the stone, Cain asked about his nature, hearing in response that there were only 10 units of magic inside. Benjamin heard, because in fact, as many as 1,790 units of magical power were stored in the stone. This secret was so incredible. Faced with difficulties, Benjamin decided that it was time to start studying the basics of magical control. The training unfolded in 4 consecutive steps: concentration, movement of energy inside the body, further release of strength, and finally, maintaining the result. The initial stage is absolute concentration. All magical energy was to gather at the navel point, and the hero persistently directed efforts to make it. All you have to do is unite all the forces into one stream. So the king fully indulged in this process, focusing on it every opinion. A nice wave of heat spilled in the abdomen, accompanied by unexpected surprise. It turned out that for the first time everything was easily. Suddenly, his brother noticed some changes in Cain, although the guy himself never realized what was happening. Only a strange heat that enveloped the palm remained in the memory, and then soon disappeared without a trace. He asked to keep this warmth side by side until the last light of consciousness was glowing in memory. Only a few days of tireless work, and the desired result did not slow down. On the 3rd day, the hero was able to carry out the plan. Finally, having succeeded, the young man broke out with unrestrained joy. Power did not leave him even at times when the mind lost his vigilance. Benjamin did not hold back the admiration, sincerely praising Cain for a brilliant task. Exhausted with tension, Cain descends on the floor and exhales hard, trying to restore strength. After 30 continuous repetitions, the test was not easy, but Benjamin answered only a confident smile and moved forward with determination. Unbearable fatigue was piled up every muscle, hands trembling nervously, and the body lost its lightness, turning into a heavy burden. The award of exhaustion was barely audible. The forces left the boy. He hardly moved and asked his brother to complete his workout. Benjamin, with calm in his voice, agreed without controversy. Cain was reminded that a strict ban on touching magic will continue until complete control over abilities. And without the support of the mentor, he can afford to use the charms no earlier than a year. Having pronounced that he was ready to throw his younger brother and leave, Cain took such a terrifying look that it seemed the most unclean force appeared before his eyes. During the second energy session, Benjamin particularly emphasized the importance of absolute collection. The student returned to the familiar exercise, concentrating to the limit of the possible, fully immersing the mind into the process. He was covered with confidence and a barely noticeable smile, tried to act even more decisively, is convinced of his own ingenuity. But the most interesting thing is yet to come, and soon the moment will come when he can show his true art. At the request of his older brother, the guy tried to direct the accumulated magical energy directly to his own heart. Focusing on the feelings, the hero stepped step by step, allowing her to reach her breast slowly, exactly as his older brother instructed. The awareness of what is happening around and did not come. The girl is frozen with a silent statue without moving for a moment. 10 long minutes have passed. Again settling on the floor, she frozen, like a statue. Benjamin immediately noticed how difficult it was, and delicately offered support. Brother asked Cain to ask that he tense and put his palms on his stomach again. In the air, magical energy thickened, forming transparent spheres, and Cain's chest broke out a barely noticeable pain. It was necessary to endure this discomfort. Only he could move on. Strong embrace supported his younger brother without letting him fall when the loud cry escaped from his chest. Tears flashed in his eyes, because the pain suddenly penetrated the whole body. The confession was sincere. The feeling was unbearable. But without this inevitable procedure, the expansion of concise magical channels. It would be impossible to open the path to free flow for magic. And otherwise it could not be, because such a process is doomed to be accompanied by acute pain. Once on the ground, Benjamin said with warmth, "Today they set up full and surpassed themselves." Inside, a powerful force was nurturing, and the older brother explained, "This phenomenon is called circulation. Only those who learn to direct the energy from the lower abdomen to the breast are achieved from the top to the heart. Then from the left palm to the right foot, from the right foot to the left, ending the circle, turning the flow from the left leg back into the abdomen." He almost came up with a tear when the thought was in his head. His older brother was a real demon. It has been 5 days after that terrible moment of unbearable pain. Since then, Cain's gaze has been cautious more often. He wary of Benjamin from time to time. In the end, Benjamin suggested that he was probably too sharp last time. The minutes floated relentlessly. Cain hurriedly gave his brother to know that all the preparations were completed. Surprised by the speed at which the guy mastered the circulation, Cain immediately asked if he could demonstrate the result. The concentration made it possible to feel like magical energy, returning to the bottom of the abdomen, has become more denser and more saturated than before. Having advised to find harmony of magic inside, Benjamin with a smile noted that this will allow you to move much faster. Such a thought seemed to the boy a real find, and he did not restrain her sincere laughter, recognizing the idea really shiny. The habit of working hard, formed in Klein in the times when he was in captivity of the corporation, did not leave him now. Even without the support of Ben training, they did not stop, and each new victory added joy and confidence to him. In the third lesson on energy release, Benjamin was tasked with connecting his palms in front of him, forming the perfect circle. He needed to concentrate on the flows of energy between the rings to achieve absolute harmony and symmetry in the position of hands. And it was at this moment that Cain remained in ignorance. He was not yet aware of the true essence of what was happening. The news of the injured right hand of brother and an unsuccessful attempt to move magic instantly forced Benjamin to act. Without hesitation for a minute, he outlined 3 paths to the boy that could help cope with bad weather. One way involved support and increased magic circulation. According to another way, the level of magical energy is appropriate to reduce a little and make another attempt. Finally, the third option required to increase the concentration of magic and start over. The sinister shadow seemed to be Benjamin when a question was heard from his mouth. Which of the 3 ways is he ready to choose? Looking at him, Cain clearly felt the presence of a demonic essence that chatted in the bowels of Benjamin. No hope for salvation. Any of the proposed options will inevitably lead to pain and suffering. The surprise took over Cain when the young man opted for the first version. Putting Cain's on his back carefully, the guy quietly asked to start the cycle again. In the heart of the hero, Brother Ben's magic suddenly flashed, filling it from the inside and making his own magical energy thin, piercing. A new outbreak of pain escaped from Cain's chest, giving him neither breath nor relief. It seemed that suffering only increasing, as if someone's invisible hand stubbornly twisting a degree of torment, forcing him to tremble from powerlessness. Hearing the approving words to his address, and learning that the magical power had already penetrated his left hand, the guy with passion and confidence further controlled the energy flow. It was necessary to release magical energy hidden inside the body, a process known as release. The eyes were filled with tears when the guy met his brother's gaze. Benjamin seemed as if a quiet whisper had been heard, but in the next moment the hero shook his head and assured that he seemed to him. He did not say a word. Forced to slide the palm, with a careful rotational movement, accelerates the blood into the frozen arm. The magic gradually loses strength. With every wave it becomes easier to breathe. So 2 hours pass. The exclamation of joy is enthusiastically disrupted. The task was to accomplish without any help of hands. This triumph was only possible thanks to the harsh lessons of Benjamin, who discovered the true art of liberation. The 4th lesson has discovered a new complexity before the student: the art of holding down great power. Given the danger of this test, Benjamin has chosen a place outside the home. The strict warning did not wait for itself. No loss of focus. And if the attention at least fades for a moment, instantly cross your hands diagonally in front of you. An unexpected task, to lift both hands diagonally. It seemed completely devoid of meaning. At this point, Benjamin's voice was calm and confident. First, it is important to focus on circulation, collect sufficient magic, and then start release of energy. Benjamin Cain listened to the maximum focus. He gathered the flow of energy between his hands and slowly rotating his palms, gradually giving her the perfect spherical shape. Magic energy was erupted from the body, like an unrestrained flow, and this outflow was not stopped. Something suggested, it is dangerous to continue so on. Suddenly, the air broke a loud explosion, which even forced Benjamin to shudder at unexpected fear. The awareness of the situation came to Cain instantly. The cheek flashed from the powerful slap, which he was generously weighed by his older brother, according to the previously predicted warning. Without proper vigilance, it was necessary to put your hands diagonally forward in time. As soon as the attention began to dissipate, he was surprised to look at the wide abyss, which arose a moment before. The ears almost echoed the strict guidelines of the brother, who warned against light-hearted attitude to the magic. True strength is not fun, but the responsibility that should be borne with all seriousness. The bitter disappointment was reflected in the nod, when the thoughts were broken about the awareness. Magic is far from light-hearted. Regardless of the effort, stubborn confidence has shook. A mistake is hiding somewhere. However, the greatest horror hid in the other world, not learning how to master the magic. The consequences of even the slightest mistake could be much more dramatic than it seemed at first. The sincere surprise took over Benjamin when Cain asked him for the second time to ask for science, assuring that this time the promises would not be empty words. Promising to end the excuses and complaints, he sincerely appealed to his brother to bring his studies to the end. A light smile touched his lip, and a proposal for Cain was made. In this case, start with a blank sheet. 4 days have passed since that conversation. During this period, the hero has mastered the art of magical control, so the skill was finally reflected in his status. A joyful exclamation broke through his mouth when he jumped happily, celebrating victory. Benjamin awarded the bravely loud, sincere applause. He emphasized how impressive this achievement was. Not everyone can master a new skill in such a short time. The guy bowed in a grateful gesture and thanked his brother for his unchanged support. In addition, Benjamin noted that if the workout is successful, the guy will take over the art of attacking without the need for spells. Dumping all his power, Benjamin easily created a striking explosion, and on the ground a deep blade was gunshot. 5 greater and more terrifying than that left Cain's. Before this spectacle, the guy frozen, unable to believe his eyes, and joking through a brother, like a hero from Dragon Ball. In his head, a clear thought flashed. It is better to never annoy Benjamin again. 2 years have passed since Benjamin went to celebrate the new year. On the platform of Alice and Cain waved his hands, through smiles hiding sadness from farewell to his brother. The grueling workouts were tested on the verge of opportunities, but it was at the moment that the first mastery of magic was filled with sincere pride in their own path. From now on, all the power of magical forces opened in front of him. Benjamin's bracelet slept in mind, and without hesitation, the young man hurried to remove him, taking advantage of the last sparks of the magic, which was still in the decoration. The plan was already rising in his head. His brother once shared a special method, and it is time to put it in practice. All of his consciousness gathered at one point where the energy was controlled, keeping them under strict control. It is the suffering that turned into a protective shell, and the skin has strengthened, gaining the firmness of a true rock. Grabbing several medium stones, the guy broke them at the wall. When the blow was successful, a bright spark of joy broke out in his eyes. The jumps of joy were almost brought to the sky. Success inspired new accomplishments. In the fascination, the boy began to think, what else, except stones and holes, can you take on their own? The skill in creating stone forms has already mastered the young man, so now she has come to master the art of holes. Gathering all his magical power into one, the guy tried to form a neat hole in a solid visor. Despite all the efforts made by the young man, the hole came out so small that the disappointment immediately reflected on the face. The muscles on the legs are buzzing from voltage, and the magic supply is almost zero. Only 20 units were used from all over the arsenal. The other was swallowed by a relentless magic absorber. Awesome aware of this catastrophically little, the hero lends to a decisive step, to increase his own level, housing the skills and persistent training with Benjamin. Thanks to incredible efforts, the hero's internal level increased significantly, and his main qualities have been significantly improved. A sudden jump from bed, and awareness, he was inadvertently. Evening darkness was already pouring around. The impression of a sudden splash of magical energy made the hero immediately review his own status. Immediately after getting rid of the magical sucker, the feeling of boundless power returned in full. Magic energy decreased to a barely noticeable particle. Only 100 remained from its former power. The unusual feeling enveloped, but at the same time the admiration was overwhelmed by the soul. Even the remnants of power seemed impressive. Without spending a minute, the hero took up the training, determined to regain greatness. On the way, she caught him with an asking look and immediately asked where he was going. The sun was already rising high. Noon was approaching. Cain was embarrassed, so he has lied in a hurry that he had no lessons today. I understood perfectly. She found out about his workout in magic instead of lessons. The fierce dispute would not have been avoided. Together with her sister Alice, they learned to read until he could resist Fatimi and decided to stretch a little on a walk. These words caused a good smile in Lydia, which looked completely satisfied. Confessing that he needed a short break, he sadly asked for the distrust he felt from her. Cain upset the situation. A bitter wave of guilt covered him with her head. In his thoughts, he was sorry for the mother. Once in the yard, Cain was surprised to catch the familiar pit, the one that seemed to disappear for a long time. The stable and insidious magic stretched around a dangerous spiderweb. The slightest carelessness could cause pain to one of those present. It seemed to get rid of her difficult challenge, but suddenly Cain was illuminated by an unexpected thought that gave hope for salvation. Having made the decision, the guy appealed to magic and tried to embody the order. Let this pit disappear. It seemed like nothing more exciting than it could be. The failure disappeared, as if it were not. It was manifested that the consequences of magical phenomena are quite realistic to erase, leaving only ghostly memories. It was much more difficult to absorb magic than to create it. Everyone had to give twice as much of their own strength for everyone during a charm. Waking a magical trace is a task for the most talented sorcerers whose energy is really striking, because only they are able to cope with such a difficult thing. A smile appeared on his face, and a passionate curiosity pushed the study of this place. Therefore, the sorcerer instantly created the power of a lot of holes, revealing its new secrets. Having cut the holes, the sorcerer carefully imposed a devastating spell, and at the same moment in the mind, lightning was thought. The power of magic of the earth hides much more advantages than it seemed at first glance. There was a dawn moment, and waking up, the hero felt a rush of strength and a thirst for future trials. The bright sunlight was already confidently spilling over the city, and the desire to improve magical skills again did not give the hero rest. Alongside Alice, looking at her brother, quietly envy him with his happiness so often to leave the house, because she was again waiting for the usual school days. Tears almost splashed from her eyes when Lydia confessed, "There is no more power to engage in mathematics." Hearing this, Lydia wished her success in the lessons with Cain, but these words were surprised at the girl. She did not immediately realize what Cain was here. I had to ask whether it was really planned to study with him today, and in response, she only heard a sad sigh. Cain again disappeared somewhere, as he always was walking, not learning. Allison's vigilant look stopped at Lydia. He was joined by Alice, and their eyes, full of questions, studied the girl carefully. In a cozy backyard, the protagonist decided on the experiment. By force of will, tried to conquer a stone. Having concentrated, he commanded solid breeds to change, and in the eyes of a regular fragment turned into a perfectly polished cube. With his breath, the guy leaned to the ground. I am sure that he would find only a regular stone, but a perfectly carved cube with a flat like a blade was opened. The explosion of joy lifted him up. The experiment proved to be successful. Inspired by an unexpected triumph, the young man already knew. This day he would certainly continue getting acquainted with the magic of the earth. The palms of the palm were skilled from the stone, a few more massive blocks. The young man felt like a true creator, a master of his own fortress. Before the evening silence, a pleasant feeling of results was spilled on the soul. The day seemed surprisingly fruitful. Tiro's view slid the results of the audit, given the probable impact of circulation. As soon as the sorcery is activated, a hole is cut out in the ground from the sewer hatch, about 10 centimeters deep. If you want to make the pit deeper, the hole is inevitably formed at the specified distance, but its width decreases, the same AMO. The hero's magical energy was struck with new power. To build a basement or dig a deep well was a trifle for him. For such a wizard, these tasks seemed basic fun. In the idea, how to learn how to make many perfectly identical stones, and erect strong walls or perfectly flat roads. The smile involuntarily shone down when the idea of the irreplaceability of the magic of the earth flashed in the imagination. Already swinging back to his workouts, he suddenly heard the voice of Lydia. Alice stood next to her. Her mother finally searched her son. It turned out that Alice told everything, and Cain's justification about the school was only a fictional lie. For Alice, it was incredible injustice that only Cain could be played outside. With the strength of determination, the girl led the boy behind, although Cain remained sure that he was able to master magic independently. No soul weighed in his words, and in the end, a table near Alice became a place for him, the heavy sigh of his chest. There was no difficulty reading and comprehending the material, but the brutal writing of primitive words soaked to despair. At the 35th year of life, he was forced to perform tasks that seemed to be only for a 6-year-old baby, and that was not visible to the end. Half a year has since fallen as Benjamin has left these places. The innumerable hours of persistent training have not been in vain. Cain's skill in the magic of earth reached the 2nd level. Moreover, the art of managing magical flows has risen to a new height, and the ability, boundless stock of magical power, has become active. Among the new skills appeared among new skills, evading boring science. Once, seeking to reveal the secrets of the outside world, Cain got into the yard to explore the properties of plants. Having taken over all his arsenal of his skills, Cain began to explore what unknown horizons of abilities were discharged before him. Now his collection has been replenished with 3 more unusual skills: Earth Bastion, the manipulation of the field, and the art of creating clay. The first gift made it possible to grow 1 meter and 2 meters in height from the ground, using 12 omualai. By erecting an earthen pillar, Cain was able to aim a stone ball to where he wants. The 2 other skills gained also opened great opportunities. But despite this, most people considered the magic of the earth in vain. In the past, even his parents have repeatedly expressed concern about his prospects. The frustration did not take the mountain over him. Today, there was a new desire to try again. The mighty wall grew up in front of her eyes, and after that she had forcefully flew stone balls. Having joyfully noticed that the stone nuclei have not been able to destroy the wall, decides to test its strength and find out how many blows will need to be done to break through this obstacle. Finally, the 10th shot broke the stubborn wall. A strong obstacle could not stand it. At this point, the mysterious stranger was silently approaching from the back, and suddenly suggested that the masterkin probably possesses magic. Gardy smiled. This is the name of the gardener and curl of San Roge. The watchful eye immediately noted, the guy is distinguished by his remarkable talent in this case. The mighty figure of a man of 30 years was a scar that crossed his left eyebrow, and a void instead of a hand. This loss has raised him in a duel with Dean, and after difficult trials found peace and a new meaning in the walls of the dwelling of the San Rose, where he was admitted to service. Despite the loss of hand, he practiced with the trolley without unnecessary effort, carefully cared for the garden and flower beds. Under the harshness of the features hidden surprisingly gentle and good character. He turned to the guard with a barely noticeable smile and asked what had happened here. In response, he heard, soon it was time to plant a braid for a winter gathering, so the man was about to prepare the field for this important work. The gentle sweetness of baked potatoes of this variety has always fascinated me. It feels special softness and warmth. The sad Sima reminded me of these little joys. It was a living personification of worry, a treasure of light in the middle of everyday gray. Taking the lamish in his hands, the owner went to the field, so the hero hurried to wish him a happy work. Meanwhile, Cain looked at the stone heap nearby. He was just thinking about the need to clear this obstacle, already suffered fatigue. Having resorted to the art of removal, Cain is just a moment, and the whole pile of stones disappeared without a trace. The surroundings finally cleared, and the young man was revealed to the female. Carefully and fervently dug a solid weeds overgrown with soil, which was struck by fragments of stones. A number of important tasks awaited him ahead. After delving into his arsenal, the hero burned the ground skillfully and dug the soil, creating clay. This knowledge has already reached the 2nd level of skill. After that, there was a prison call, and the keeper appeared nearby, ready to help. The help was sincerely suggested, but the doubts were not released by the man. Having lit his curiosity, he expressed his intention to experience something unknown. Confessing to the keeper in his intentions, Oregon expressed his desire to master the magic of the earth, although he still did not realize what its true essence is. Find out from a man which field with tangerines he wants to have. The keeper took the rake, waved them and clearly outlined the boy's borders of the future Mandarin garden. The view thrown into a spacious field that could compete with a badmintonic platform instantly suggests an understanding. From now on, attention and perseverance will have to be directed exclusively on magic. The magical energy of the hero struck around him, and the next moment on the site came to life the spell, Earth Digging. The Cain's earth spell was amazed at all those present. The moment the rocky surface turned into a pliable, soft, like velvet, and land. The hero's hardened hands skillfully loosened the earth, turning it into soft, loose soil, ready to take a new life. The digging skill was a real find for field processing, although it was only in limited areas. However, the hero was eagerly awaited when he was able to cover the whole hectares of valuable land with his experience. Having charged with determination, the hero several times in a row applied the skill of digging of the earth, trying to stand up full. The work was completed. The field is now perfect for sowing. Cain's efforts caused a genuine admiration for a man. The staggering swept a man. A task that has been taken to 10 days has already been done brilliantly. Thankfully, gratefully squeezed his hand, he thanked Mr. Cain with all his sincerity for his invaluable help. To get a plow, holding it with only one hand, would take a long time. However, the ability to magic the earth was allowed to cope with the task surprisingly quickly. The strength remained on another job. The warm wave of gratitude forced the hero to even get a little bit. A good mood, Cain decided to go for potatoes for his comrades. The face illuminated a joyful smile. The look slid in equal lines of beds, and in the mind was the thought, it is not easy to work, to grow bread for the daily way. The magic of the earth made Cain an opportunity to exercise with garden deeds, making work almost pleasure. At this time, the guard with the news approached him. He brought fresh potatoes. The impression was engulfed when a security guard was thrown before his eyes, who threw whole potatoes in the ground, because he always believed that it was necessary to plant only sprouted with sprouts. The content of his words slipped from me, because in Satam we always planted potatoes in this way. Awareness of the difference in approaches to growing plants was a surprise for me. The local methods are not like the ones I am used to in my world. Memories of work training lessons came to life in memory. Our teacher constantly emphasized that without seedlings, the harvest in Satsum would hardly succeed. This thought made you think. And suddenly he was right. The proposal to join forces and share seed potatoes, enthusiasm in words, issued a desire to grow Satsum's own field nearby. The partner was readily attached to this idea. He promised to equip a neighboring area and become a guardian of the whole case. Such a turn of events caused the main character to be a true admiration. His gratitude was sincere and warm. The look stopped on potatoes. The sprouts were forced to think about further actions. There was no device around, so the idea suddenly broke out in the mind. Not to try magic? The search was in vain, did not bring any hint or help, so it was only necessary to rely on their own mind. Considering all the options, the hero chose. It's time to try magic and to create clay from nothing. The hobby overwhelmed the hero. With his own hard hands he revived a piece of clay and earth, embodying the true reality in this creation. The pleasure of the skillfully done work filled the soul. It seemed that this item would be useful more than once and not twice. Thinking about the benefits of your creation, there is a new idea. The next time it is worth making utensils, adding something unusual to your skills. Only a few days passed, and at the place where the seeds of potatoes were in the ground, the first sprouts appeared. I shared my husband as a real wonder. Every potato plant gave the sprouts. His own fields were barely covered with the first greenery. One day, a wise mentor voiced a similar set. Growing sweet potatoes from seeds usually gives meager seedlings. Instead, the harvest remains sluggish. The most important thing is to provide the plants with proper care, which is what the teacher of the hero taught. That is why guards appealed to Cain's to allow seedlings to be planted, and he immediately agreed. Moreover, he gratefully expressed his sincere admiration with the help of guard. He reported its intention to make several rates, but for guardian it sounded mysteriously. Subsequently, it was revealed that local knowledge and skills in growing a crop are strikingly not like the ones he used to serve. Verbal explanations are unlikely to bring the essence of the hero, so they chose another way. They showed everything in fact. The first task was to plow the fields, and here the skills of the hero to cultivate the soil became useful. 6 meters wide, the area was waiting for a bold shovel. It was only necessary to carefully lay the trench. So the young man used spells and cleared the ideal passage in the soil. Having arranged real beds, Cain did not restrain his delight and exclaimed his victory happily. Such a miracle left the keeper in full surprise. He just got a moment, unable to say a word. Listening carefully, the guy learned, this raised layer of land is called a bed. Such a structure improves drainage, absorbs the heat of sunlight much faster, so the earth warms up earlier, and the plants in such an area develop stronger and healthier. Once in the walls of secondary school, the teacher shared the same considerations. Now it's time to thank for science. The imagination was vividly painted by Mr. Cain, because his erudition in this field was a genuine delight. Even in the opinion, it was not possible that such a method was possible at all. I wonder where Mr. Cain comes from such a crazy awareness. In response, he heard the whole thing in his unusual gift to feel the essence of the earth. The joy glowed in Cain's eyes when he plunged into the depths of the mighty magic of the earth, captured by its boundless diversity. But with this warmth, a slight embarrassment was born. The awareness of his own self. Confidence made it thought to apologize to Garda for the staring words just delivered. Finally, the magic of the earth began to produce tangible fruits. There were more and more ways to apply it in daily worries. While Cain, along with Alice, learned new knowledge, the teacher threw them a fresh arithmetic task. Alice has not yet coped with 2-digit arithmetic, so the teacher decided to explain in more detail her incomprehensible moments. However, suddenly Cain snatched the word, confidently swaying as if he was simply given adding and subtracting if only 1 digit is about. The tasks with 2-digit numbers were not simply given to her, but, according to Cain, the calculations with simpler, unambiguous quantities were quite good. So, having put a little more effort, the girl will soon overcome more complex examples. Meanwhile, an unexpected feeling of awkwardness enveloped the protagonist. In his 35 years, he is only busy in writing. Inspired by a graceful idea, Cain rushes to action without hesitation, without even thinking about whether a bacha will find in this world. Having such a device at hand is a real find, because it will be useful even in this world where electricity is not available. Taking a handle, the guy promised to complete everything after class. When the lessons were over, he took a step towards the son's yard, plunging into thinking about what to create the design of a future account. The experience with the accountant has given Cain a deep understanding of her principle of work. It is unlikely that this skill will decorate the resume, but knowledge helped to reproduce the design of the device effortlessly in the imagination. The clay had to remain flexible and susceptible, especially when it comes to the future hero, as the man claimed. The images of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division were constantly emerged. Inspired by the idea, he decided to fashion the calculation on his own, using clay as a material to embody his design into a tangible object. Over time, Cain has a hand-created device. The joy enveloped the hero. The device of the bark, as it should, and seemed to work flawlessly. It remains to be tested in the case. But as soon as the fingers touched the account, everything began to crumble and crumble just before his eyes. The staggering swept the hero when suddenly the account was scattered on small debris. It was then that the awareness came. It was not clear enough in his imagination. The wave of disappointment swept softly inside. Thinking, he decided to recreate the account, this time imagining it from steel, reliable and invulnerable. At first he tried to cut it from the stone, but this design was too fragile. Now the iron accountant has become strong and stable, hardly undergoing breakage. Having tested this item in action, compared the feeling with the game on the iron Altka. Increasingly, interest was inflamed, because thanks to skills, everything was given easily and easily. But for the one who was just opening this business, a similar task could be a real challenge. Several bold experiments and failures eventually led to a dreamy result. The task was done brilliantly, and the workflow gave true pleasure. The playground was larger than the one they used to at home, so they had to play with more effort. Unknown echoes still did not knock out the track. The main thing, the structure withstood. Nothing shifted from the place. It is such reliability that Cain thought he can ever need his sister. Having studied the 2nd and 5th abacus, the hero acknowledged, to master them is not easy. However, he did not think that this knowledge could be useful. Earlier or later you will have to explain where the idea came from. By the way, Cain said that such things have already happened in this world, albeit with special differences. Not finding Benjamin near his brother, Cain went to Lydia's mother with this question. Excited so that he shrugged his head with his hands, Cain could not hide his anxiety. To imagine how to pay family debt, they could not. The content of words about some debt slid from him, and the reflections were cut off by a sudden and quiet approach of the maid. The girl lingered nearby and asked Mr. Cain what he was looking for here. Suddenly tapped, the guy was noticeably nickened and said he was looking for Mrs. Lydia. Hearing this, the maid reassured, "Ms. Lydia is currently in the library." The hard sigh of his chest came when the awareness came. This year Fortin was on his side. The steps rushed to the library, and the anxiety has swirled in thoughts. Really? In their account? A debt hangs in their account? Horror covered him from the very thought that it could destroy their family. Only 6 years were combined with them, but these moments seemed invaluable. The fist involuntarily shrinks from determination. Such development will not allow. The picture of despair in the eyes of people reveals the soul, and confusion holds in captivity. What to do now? He does not know. The magic of this earth and the bitter echoes of the former life are all that remained in it. The previously acquired knowledge gave the opportunity to increase the well-being of the family and open new horizons for their lands. Suddenly, Oregonist heard about the difficult financial situation of the House Gay Rose and was caught by the desire to turn the estate to be supported in difficult time. However, confusion engulfed him. Ideas about the first step have not yet taken place in a clear plan. Without any action on his part, the time was rapidly floating, and if you delay, everything may be irreversibly late. Cain feverishly thought that he was still able to manage just now without delaying. However, the plan was now in search of Lydia's mother. He needed to know the details about the accounts, so he had just finally decided. He went to ask her. He stepped on the library confidently, although it seemed to him that he was still young for this. He did not wait for the entrance permit. Rumors have rumored that his genus had long been famous for the passion for collecting books, so the home library was impressed with the size and wealth of the collection, strikingly distinguishing even among the libraries of other barons. The look full of hope slid to Lydia, so I wanted to feel her support in the most responsible time. A young woman was quietly immersed in reading under the soft light of the lantern. Hardly noticing the guest, she made a sign of her hand to go without detaching from the pages. When Cain stepped inside, he was immediately hugged by the drunk aroma of ancient skin and cracked paper. I didn't even know how many secrets this library has. A light smile appeared on her mouth. Too well she saw that Cain was only the first steps in an unknown world. From now on, she promised to consult with him about every little thing, because the guy just mastered reading and probably wants to choose books for himself. Suddenly, air in the room was filled with some elusive tension, and the reason for this probably lied in the strange glasses of Lydia. He wanted her view to finally stop on a book that flickered on the shelf. It was also amazed at what this mysterious book could tell. The meaning of his words remained a mystery to Lydia, and Cain felt that he had chosen not quite a good way to explain. He was talking about the bright book that was hiding on the top shelf to the right, and Lydia concluded that it was about her. She reached out to the book, which Cain drew attention to, and revealing her cover, did not notice any shine or glow. On the pages of the book, a whole survival guide was opened, detailed instructions for growing rice, handwritten preparation of miso, soy sauce, marina, and even ketchup were adjacent to the recipes of various seasonings. Even more exciting, separate sections taught how to create electrical appliances with magic. The name Book of the Hero seemed quite unusual. The mother's face turned. Sincere surprise engulfed her when she realized the son defeated the written word. Without hesitation for a minute, the Guy machine read the written. Only then, in surprise, realized the text was Japanese. Meanwhile, the girl has already made an order to urgently bring Luke and Randolph. The mystery never remained revealed. Everything became known the hero. Once upon a time, 12 generations ago, a bold ancestor made this book on his own, and since then, she unloved to hand into their hands in their family. Years passed, and the heirs could no longer understand the ancient writing of the great hero. In fact, this should not happen at all, but the records were made in the language in which the hero spoke in the past life. In no way, it was difficult to find an explanation for this for his own descendants. Such a coincidence put him in an extremely difficult situation. Thanks to the found book for Cain, the door to the archives opened, in the secret of which Randolph carefully dedicated him, teaching the art of working with them. Without a single shadow, the hero realized that he is in front of the same reincarnated warrior, full of desperate determination and strength of spirit. On the other side of the world, the Japanese was destined to become a fighter of demons, but fate prepared an incredible turn. An irreconcilable enemy, a demonic king, once again became an ally. A spark broke out between the two hearts. Their alliance gave life to the child, and harmony and quiet happiness reigned in the house. Japan's sadness still lives in the heart, but a sincere smile appears on the face when he flips through the pages of a special book, a true guide for Cain, who can be reborn in this new world one day. This is the true goal of heroic follia. The news that not only he, but other reincarnations in this world could be completely knocked out the soil from under his feet, even the most stable. The presence of a real hero, in addition, was completely confused. The flow of the new information that has fallen now overwhelmed Cain so much that the desire to understand everything receded to the determination to postpone reflections for later. A cracked look at the accounts pushed to the decision. You need to reject the past and immerse yourself in work with new forces. Last time, the question of accounts remained unspoken, so this time I decided to turn to this book to get the necessary answers from Lydia. On the way to his father's office, his gaze caught a couple standing next to Lydia. Interested, she immediately asked Cain to ask what happened. The desire to impress his parents overwhelmed Cain. He was looking forward to their own account. However, his father's reaction was restrained, as if a similar abacus has long been familiar to their family. The anxiety was over to the soul of the guy. What if adults do not take seriously the invention made by children's hands? Another one with interest in the look, asking, "What a wonder. A thing with many little balls." The hero confidently took the device in his palm, lifted him closer, and explained, "It is an abacus, an ancient computing tool." Explanation of the hero. Balls on the device is the embodiment of the number of 5. Instantly stunned the couple, leaving them in a state of pleasant surprise. Warm hands and sincere words of gratitude to Kana were heard from the mouth of the guests. All remained delighted. Such outspoken support deeply impressed the guy. General consent prevailed in the room. This new way of solving mathematical problems was both simpler and more than the usual methods. In a moment, Lydia called Randolph. The butterfly, respectfully bowing, appeared in front of the mistress. His father, with a gesture, invited him to pay attention to the amazing device, and Cain, not spending a minute, in detail, and clearly outlined the same as he had just explained Lydia and his father. The meaning of this act was obvious for the Bagretsky, although for many years of service such miracles did not occur in his path. A mysterious smile appeared on Cain's face. He understood perfectly. There was no similar here. Randolph, unable to restrain his curiosity, asked Mr. Cain, as he managed to create such an incomprehensible thing. For a moment, Cain had a slight confusion. Awareness came suddenly. If the 6-year-old baby demonstrates a deep knowledge of the mechanism, many suspicions will arise. Such abilities would quickly attract unwanted attention and avoid problems. Lydia recalled with conviction that this story was allegedly contained in the hero's book, although in reality, there was no one. In her imagination, the hero could get acquainted with this episode on the pages, but the true intentions of Cain were dramatically different. The pages of this subject revealed vivid illustrations, and its creation united the magic of the earth and Cain's ingenuity. Intuitive use was not a problem for him. Familiar numbers written in their native language immediately suggested the course of action. At the same time, there was no surprise. The arithmetic tasks they considered in the lessons were solved here easily. Imagination drew a picture how Alice would be delighted, receiving such a gift from Cain. Thoughts led to an indisputable conclusion. Such creation can only Cain. Having realized the idea of his father, the guy asked Mr. Cain to question how many such products he could create daily. Only the earth served as the necessary material. It was worth making a little effort, and in a day he created 100 or 2 such products. Twice it appeared on the face of the Bagretsky, who approved. This is a real miracle. Without any hesitation, he suggested that the owner start work, and the young man was readily admitted to this proposal. On the table lay a neatly prepared primer for the ground. This time Cain began to create clay, kneading the material in his hands. As soon as he finished molding the product, he immediately demonstrated his talents, which caused admiration and surprise to his parents. Only a few minutes passed and the creation was completed. With a true admiration, the girl rushed to Cain, hugging him and exclaiming that it was a real miracle. The emotions overwhelmed her, and the sparks in the eyes were blazing. The Bogretsky, in turn, expressed the opinion that it was such an effort that they have the hope of reviving the famous family St. Ross. The gentle hand slid on the boy's head, filling the gesture with warmth and care. Then the father carefully asked his son to ask one small service. He did not plan to press, but asked Kindo to cancel the estimates that were superfluous. The ease of task did not cause doubts about the hero, although first the appointment of so many grades remained a mystery. Everything became clear after the conversation. This was not just asked. With a new understanding, the hero without hesitation agreed to assist. Having held his hand through the baby's hair, he expressed his son's sincere gratitude for his support. So, as they planned, they both did it. Day by day, new accounts were born under his skilled hands, and some of them he generously passed Alice. Without hearing, a whole mountain of 2,000 accountants grew before him. And this was despite the fact that he planned to create only one for Sister Alice at the beginning. Unexpectedly, even for himself, he was a creature of a large number of products that his father was now going to be attributed to the trading guild. If fate smiles, these simple things will open the family to profit. The surprise of his father changed the smile. He laughed, deciding that his son was still early thinking about such things. But Cain understood everything, even too well to voice his thoughts. The father translated all the organizational worries to Randolph, and the diligent Butter came to the case. He was fascinated with curiosity. Together with Randolph, he went to the guild, so his abacus eventually found himself among the treasures of the trade guild. At first, the secretary met this story with a clear doubt, but listening more carefully, did not resist the sincere interest that he shone in his eyes. When ABAC was successfully registered, the administration decided to decorate it with a special distinction. In case someone has planned to design a similar device, this part should be proof of the uniqueness of the invention. The fears that someone can scratch a similar device threatens future disputes over the authenticity of the invention. In an effort to get clarity, Cain addressed this issue to the merchant. The merchant, without hesitation, replied, "The final word is always behind Hermes himself, god of trade. If the divine will is already proclaimed, no mortal will dare to contradict this decision." Only a few days passed, as Cain gained recognition by the first creator of Abacus, and this news has become a true pride for his family, especially for his mother Lydia. However, the young man was already waiting for another surprise, no less impressive and mysterious. Trading with his alphabets for 3 gold coins each, the smart merchant was able to get rich on this successful design. In this world, there were coins of 4 types: copper, silver, gold, and platinum, with a face value of 100 conventional units. The copper was estimated at 10, and the value of the gold flew up to 100,000. Otherwise, you will not say, in their hands there were crazy 600 million yen. For Cain, this amount seemed beyond the limit of imagination, so overwhelming that it was difficult to even grasp. At one time, when he worked as a simple clerk, he did not dream about such fortune. Now it became clear why Randolph behaves so confidently. He has a perfect situation and knows clearly where to go. The feeling of relief has swept the soul. All the troubles seem to have already remained in the past, and in the house reigned. Smiling with relief, his father said that with financial difficulties he was finally over, so you can rest a little. However, he emphasized, it is not enough to rush the castle walls and arrange the roads to winter. For other costs, he advised to spend money with maximum care. Carefully watching, the guy felt what his father's sincerity was concerned about the needs of people. Before his eyes, a true ruler came. With sincere regret in his voice, the guy appealed to his father with apology, and then promised to make a few more new obeisance for the family. The capture of Cain, when he saw the hero, despite the fatigue, did not bow under the burden of work, and continued to create one abacus after another. Only a few days passed, and another 1,000 abbot was ready. Feeling pride in the task, Cain knocked his father quietly on the door to inform. The work was completed. Absorbed by the assembly of an important document, his father suddenly lifted his head, gave his son a warm smile, and thanked her sincerely for his support. The case received a sincere gratitude for his important support. thanks to his efforts, managed to save many people from troubles. The father gently laid his hand on Cain's head without hiding pride, and with warmth in his voice confessed how happy his son has such a son. The heart of her father overwhelmed the joy. Watching the magic of the earth gives people so many good changes. Earlier, he discussed with Lydia that Kainova deserves a decent reward, no matter how young the magician himself. So, contacting Cain, his father asked what kind of award he would like to receive. Once in his past life, Cain would probably demand a share of profits. But now, becoming only a 6-year-old child, he did not even have the opportunity to spend that money if he received them. There was no clear desires in the soul, but it was a pity to miss such a brilliant opportunity. The consciousness continued to have the passionate dreams from the past. An unexpected outbreak of inspiration pushed the young man to ask Daddy next time to prepare 2 juicy tangerines for him next time. Concerned with an unusual request of his son, his father with a sincere smile promised, "Next time, during the joint training, 2 tangerine satum will be waiting for Cain." The joy was overwhelmed by the guy. He had fun jumped, and with his dad healed the expectation of a new opportunity to taste sweet fruits and continue to take care of his land. Thoughts twisted around the question, why are the wounds given such a test? The girlfriend supported this cheerful observation. The work at dawn and really depletes when the sleepy silence still prevails, and the city is slowly waking up. Suddenly, Cain appeared in front of them, who was quietly traveling the corridor. He greeted with a smile on his face. "Good morning?" The warm morning Mr. Cain wished a good day, noting his early climb. With a slight smile, the young man noted that he was going on a jog and promised to return to breakfast. A light farewell gesture, and Cain was no longer visible. He disappeared as a wind. It is difficult to imagine that such liveliness and tireless energy can fit in a small 6-year-old boy. The maids were passionate about him, feeling a real inspiration from his cheerfulness and perseverance. Many of them have sincerely decided to follow this example of vitality. Randolph especially emphasized today's rise in the mood of the maid, responding warmly about their diligent work. After completing the first cases, Cain vigorously plunged into warm-up. In his opinion, a clear plan has matured. The order in the estate is not delayed. Strengthening strength and endurance was the first step for the young man. He decided to make every effort to raise his indicators to a new level. Every morning, the first light appeared on the horizon. The guy got out of bed at the 6th, and immediately began to harden the body. As soon as the time of lessons came, together with his sister, Alice went to class. Later, the path ran to a secret. 3 months of hard work have not passed in vain. Finally, the knowledge gained, and experiences allowed to raise their own skill to a new stage. In addition, Cain has fresh artifacts for the magic of earth and recovery, so he decided to understand their secrets deeper. Among the new skills from the magic of the earth, he opened the opportunity to manage the elements: sand, bagnuk, and exhaustion. Avoid mistakes helped a thorough study of each of the new ones. The hero decided not to rush, understanding them to the little things. In addition, it was really captured by the magic of recovery. Meanwhile, the level of ownership of the land in Kriya, the magic of inspiration, has reached the 2nd level of its strength. From now on, within a 3-meter circle, it is able to treat minor injuries and tighten wounds in all creatures nearby. However, the lost blood or detached parts of the body remained beyond its possibilities. Getting acquainted with these new properties, the guy wondered. The ability to heal everyone around is a real gift. However, he wanted no wounds to occur at all. The mother's inheritance endowed Cain with a magical gift, and a sincere desire to help people has become a way for his strength. On this path, mastering the most valuable will be a matter of time. After completing classes in the library, the young man went to look at the beds with Satsuma, where he suddenly came across Hart. He expressed his admiration for the gardener's skill and asked the well-being of the plant. In response, Hardy smiled extensively and assured, "There are no problems with Satsum. She is fine." Despite the fact that his own field was green, the crops of Mr. Cain admired the eye even more luxurious. The seedlings, which was planted with the hero, amazed at a gorgeous appearance. Almost every plant released strong roots. In the possession of the guardian, the harvest also met the hope, giving birth more abundant than in the previous years, but still failed to compare with the wealth of Mr. Cain field. A smile shone on his face when he assured that next year he would take care of the seedlings of the Guardian, and then the results would surprise even harder. He heard a sincere enthusiasm in response. The man immediately supported the plan, laughed, and suggested to collect so many mandarins so that their harvest could impress the entire neighborhood. Grabbing a heavy bag, he said he had to return to the estate. Cain also left nothing but followed. The feeling of full relief wrapped Cain after working in the field. So it was asked to make a break, and this thought seemed quite appropriate. However, when they turned the horn, the cheerful shadow flashed on the face of Garta. At first, the confusion engulfed, but barely looking back, the gaze came across numerous prints that stretched on the ground. A recent rain turned the path to the estate into an endless marsh. Every step on this path leaves deep prints in softened clay, until the sun is completely drying the earth. One of the workers advised to sprinkle the sand before the owner's return. Otherwise, deep tracks will quickly appear here, and no cart would no longer break this road. Saying apologize to Mr. Cain, the hero was already going to go on the sand, and immediately remembered his new power, the magic of the earth, which he could well use now. The guard of the guard asks him to give him a few more minutes. The young man appealed to the man to get a wide board or a large trowel, any tool that can be carefully aligned the soil. He described the appearance of the desired tool so clearly that the man immediately realized what it was about. Gathering freedom in his fist, he realized, now is not a place for fatigue. There was a moment to act for the sake of others. Grabbing for the call of responsibility, he called for the help of the magic of the earth. Through the effort, it was possible to cut in their own area a passage about a meter wide. Returning, he apologized to Mr. Cain for a forced expectation. But the young man just smiled, noting that he appeared at the best moment, and advised to pay attention to the trail. They say, she needs alignment so that the swamp would not gather. The arbitrary look of the guardian slid on the work of the guy. There was already noticeable sign of his great shaky. The result could not be impressed. In his thoughts, it flashed. As soon as the track is moistened and the earth becomes more plastic, the surface will be much easier. The task was quite easy for a man, and youth help made it much faster to cope with the alignment of the soil. Soon the site was carefully prepared. It was only necessary to wait until the earth was finally drying. Cain assured that the main thing was already done. At the same time, the young man overwhelmed the thirst for just a sorcerer's skill, and this moment seemed perfect to him. The magic of drying came to life in his hands. What was the surprise when the mud in his eyes literally dried up for the moment? Ideally, a flat canvas allowed the carts to roll forward without any obstacle. It was strange to see that this section of the way remained equal. The proposal was made to align the entire road, at least before his father's return, and the security guard willingly agreed with such reasonable thought. The road to the house was leveled together, working side by side, and the whole thing took about an hour. After completing his work, the man overwhelmed such a joy that he involuntarily jumped with delight. The 5, stretched with gratitude, was in his hand. The man thanked the lightning work to clean the road. But it seemed to the guard that a real miracle did not happen thanks to them, but because of the mysterious force that listened in Mr. Cain's land. All clothing and leather were in dust and dirt, so the company went to the well, hoping to freshen up and regain a decent look. Cain, walking around, could not get rid of the thought, will his father pay attention to the changes around when he would go here? However, her father's habit to delve into the newspaper on the road in a carriage left far from the best chances that he would notice something. In the silence of the library hall, an unexpected voice forced his head from the book. Someone turned to him. On the threshold, his father stood. The surprise flashed on his face. The man thought that Cain brought the way on the path that led to their home. He confessed that they'd just found themselves nearby with the guard and wanted to help, although it may not be worth doing. The father, leaning his head, hurried to ask for his act. He was convinced that he only scared him. But in fact, everything was different. Having entered the territory of the mansion, it immediately became noticeable how the tension was immediately dispelled. Not the slightest trembling. In the breast of the man, there was a suspicion. Something is wrong here. The roads of such a smooth have never seen, for which the father did not hide pride, and thanked his son, handing over a shiny silver coin as a sign. The real joy broke out in the boy's eyes, because he managed to give his father a sincere smile and get a valuable gift. Full of gratitude, the little one in his thoughts had already planned to separate his silver coin with a guard. He spent his palm warmly on his son's head. His father praised him for a good deed. However, he emphasized that he intends to reward the guard separately. and this coin is intended for him. Having given gratitude to his father, the guard also addressed Kai with words sincere thanks for the remuneration received. A few more days have passed. After a heavy rain, the grass shouted along the path, and mirrored puddles appeared on the road, attracting the traveler's attention. She made this road a great work of guard, but the old technique will again fail after the first rain. Thinking about the urgent problem, the hero feverishly weighed the opportunity, trying to find a truly effective way to cope with this challenge. An unexpected idea flashed in her head: to pave the road lined with a strong pavement. In distant old Europe, Cain cherished the dream to make the road based on the experience of past life. The ability to manage the magic of the earth made it possible to create stones and soil from nothing. In order not to lose this inspired opinion in the flow of other ideas, the guy quickly recovers it on a piece of paper. Only a few minutes took the boy to throw a detailed plan for the paving trail on the paper. First of all, in his intentions, it was possible to create a considerable number of stones with magic and place them evenly along the entire length of the route. The sheet was in his hands. A smile involuntarily touched his mouth. Something suggested, "Here he, the fastest and most convenient way." A large bunch of affairs emerged on the horizon. To immerse themselves in them without preparation meant to lose control. Therefore, Cain chose a modest start: to take Welsa. It was worth consulting with Randolph first, and also attracting Guardi to work, so Cain hurried to convey the news to him. Cain was interested in the opinion of the butter about the planned plan, so he decided to share his ideas. However, Randolph's questions about whether Cain himself was actually the author of the idea. The smile touched his mouth, and the thought flashed in his head. Despite everything, the true grandeur of the ruler lives in Nilord. The amazing, as if it was ashamed, a smile illuminated the Bogretsky's face, which only added the mystery of his words. The meaning of the speech slipped through his fingers, but the atmosphere seemed to be hinted. There is no reason to be concerned. With a solid nod, the Bogretsky promised, "Tomorrow it will be time to explore the new depths of the well more carefully, and he will surely tell the head of the joint plan." The words of gratitude were heard to Randolph, although the Bogretsky himself was convinced that he had not particularly distinguished. Despite all the circumstances, the calculations showed that it will take about 5 days to complete the work on each path. Cain was pleased with such prospects, and with a smile, he noted Randolph that had a similar experience in this craft. The idea of additional help seemed too attractive. A few more pairs of hands, and the work would move much faster. But the strict corporate rules did not allow more people to take than it was. A confident smile appeared on Cain's face. He assured that he would make a maximum of efforts to exceed all expectations. A wide smile shone down his face when he paid his attention to Mr. Cain, that he became much more insightful for a young man and seemed to change significantly after the trauma. Easy anxiety swept me. Did the butterflake notice something? But Randolph only bowed slightly to him, as if nothing had happened, as if no shadow of suspicion had flashed in his eyes. A warm glare for a moment illuminated his gaze, and the guy heard, "Everyone is really pleased to watch Mr. Cain's achievements." The pavement turned into true success, and Cain cherished in the heart of an invincible determination to make every effort for a common goal. Cain gave a sign of Garda. He was already here. Together, they moved the path to the well behind the house, preparing according to the plan to equip the surrounding area. First, it was decided to review the action plan, to outline a clear boundary that will mark the space for future work. The stick in the hand confidently draws a rough line on the ground. It is now time to get to the stones. When uttering the name of Cain, the guy orders, "The stone must appear here and now." Cain was surprised when a whole mountain grew up from almost 300 stone slabs. "I am convinced that so much is more than enough to erect a road." He gladly came to work. There was a need to remove the top layer of the earth, so Cain addressed her husband. Having combined efforts, they carefully loose the soil and lay its surface with strong stone slabs. It is about 15 minutes. The last strokes are imposed, and the young man deftly descends with a gutter. In the end, the cooking ended, and the guard exclaimed with enthusiasm, addressing the guy that the task was done brilliantly. The feeling arose as if in front of their eyes invested a real pavement. Such a technique allowed the stone to hold the heap confidently even during the strongest drains, and rainwater was freely leaked through narrow cracks to the ground without linger on the surface. Somewhere uneven relief broke a flat surface, and the shy Cain was lost between stones and humps, hiding its shadow. The guards did not pay any attention to it. Such a picture has long been a daily routine for them. It turned out that in one day it was possible to master only a small piece of all over the area. In addition, there was another task. It was necessary to invent how to equip a reliable road surface before entering the mansion. With a smile on his face, he promised to discuss this case with Randolph, adding the hope that the guard would not refuse him in the company. The guard willingly agreed. At this point, Ms. Lydia joined the conversation. It is concerned about the absence of Cain for dinner. Ms. Lydia took up the search for a young man. Once again, a well-known spectacle opened. He again began to scratch the muddy mud, causing a wave of dissatisfaction in Lydia. Carefully waving his sweat from his face with a handkerchief, she asked to dress in clean clothes. Warning about caution so as not to contaminate the clothes, a gentle reminder sounded, but Lydia only comforted her son with a smile. You should not worry about such little things. Gathering to talk to Luke again, she noticed how the boy tilted her head, upset that he had been struck again. The events unfolded exactly by design, and the guardian was surprised to say how a casual smile blossomed on the young face of the boy. After lunch, both went to the well again to get paved around him together, step by improving the case. While working with the boys, his father and Randolph suddenly appeared. Probably, my mother has already managed to share the news about the college, so the men were persistently asked to finish the road repair as soon as possible. For some period, Cain's soul overwhelmed the joy. Finally, it has come to an end. The enthusiastic shouts confirmed, Mission Cain has completed the task brilliantly, and the boy was genuinely glad that they had completed the case to the evening meal. With delight in his voice, his father had a lively conversation with a colleague, which only fueled the boy's confidence in a brilliant performance. The official proposal for the arrangement of the trails on the territory of the mansion caused Cain a real delight. The first real professional opportunity was opened before him. The father received all the explanations in advance, and the selected paving stones fit perfectly into the plan. Now, even under the storm, no one will worry about dirt and puddles on the road. Deep gratitude filled the heart for parental support, and the joy of finally allowed to master the magic of the earth openly blossomed with a smile on the face. The trail to the estate has already led straight forward. It seemed that his father had another proposal that he never dreamed of voicing. He felt suddenly, clasping his head with his hands, that he was too confused and difficult. Luke received an unexpected proposal to openly share his thoughts with adults. However, his father immediately rejected the idea, considering it too careless. Adults have talked for a few more minutes near the stick, while the guy patiently watched their alarming faces, keeping silence. The passion of curiosity did not rest. The guy was looking forward to his father, begging to share his ideas as soon as possible, dreaming that for 2 months the main city artery shines with a brand new pavement, news that can surprise everyone. Details came in memory. The road stretched almost a kilometer, and even if they had taken care of the case with their father, the work would have been consumed at least a year of hard effort. Some areas exceeded 7 meters wide, which added even more. In this situation it was not a problem, but a real chance. This is how the hero looked at, perceiving events as a successful opportunity to take the opportunity. The erection of the main road was a real challenge, but this father's promise prompted to overcome all the difficulties. The surprise was in his eyes, but the young man reassured, urging not to worry. In his words, there was confidence. They will certainly cope with additional support. Meanwhile, Cain was already rising to a new strategy, seeking to accelerate the task. After agreeing with his son's thought, his father decided to shift the case on Cain's shoulders, but at the same time warned that he did not admire or get over. The capture overwhelmed Cain. He faced an extremely responsible assignment, and without spending time, he vigorously took up the work. At the same time, the father, full of determination, appealed to Randolph. The old Bogretsky listened carefully to his every word. Only with the onset of the next morning, the unbearable severity of the circumstances fully made itself known to the boy. The stock of finances and human resources at least pleased the eye, but the confidence in Cain's success was still lacking. The decisive meeting was approaching. The physical condition failed. Gathering his fist, Cain crossed the threshold of the room, where he was eagerly looked by the teacher and Alice. Cain was thought that today is their lesson, although there were several more classes to the end of the course. The mentor gladly noted that Alice coped with all the tasks of perfect. Her success in arithmetic increased sharply as she had taken care of Abak. Smiles that blossomed due to his magic filled the heart with joy. a sincere desire to give people happiness inspired to create miracles again and again. Not a minute to doubt. In the breast, the determination will brought the intended to be completed. Gathering freedom in a fist, confidently crosses the threshold, for the second time, addressing a greeting to the widow Dvoretsky. For Randolph and the guard, a detailed scheme appeared on the table. He laid out the work of yesterday's work step by step. The guard immediately pointed to the problematic points that caused the complications, and soon they all went to the discussion together. How effectively and equally to lay the road, avoid further difficulties and find optimal solutions. It was almost impossible to imagine that this plan can be realized in just 2 months, even without a numerous detachment of assistants. The lion's share of tasks, more than 70%, was done solely thanks to good magic. Such a burden tested the courage of the hero, turning his path into a real test. The self-confidence was induced. The guy believed without hesitation in his own capabilities, and did not doubt that the task was for his strength. Putting stones in the right sequence became a real puzzle. However, in a magical sense, the idea did not seem too complicated. Meanwhile, he sincerely confessed to Mr. Cain he could not boast knowledge of witchcraft. By causing magical power, Cain created stones and put them on the path right on the ground. However, Barty noted that it would be much easier to apply a spell that would immediately turn the ground into a solid stone road. Slound, with unexpected inspiration, passionately expressed gratitude to the keeper for his brilliant advice. Magic is born of the power of imagination. As soon as the desired eyes are clearly, magic can be breathed in this life. Cain struck the keeper of the keeper. In his thoughts flashed sincere admiration with amazing wit. Hearing such praise, the man was noticeably embarrassed. Without spending time, he suggested that you try it immediately. First, you should get outside and train. It is better to make a mistake immediately than to face it. To begin with, choose a small area for training, and then gradually expand the boundaries. The hero asked the keeper to draw a few squares, and he willingly agreed to help. While this preparation is ongoing, Cain focuses on hovering her own magic. Using the circulation method, the stones were located up to 10 millimeters between each copy. In order to lay out aviations, participants directed about 100 units of magical energy, while leaving the necessary reserve for further control over the entire process. Never had to keep such a huge magical power at once, so the control slips out of the fingers more and more rapidly. Catching this dangerous change, the hero realizes it's time to return to the ground. The stone obeyed his will. Rising from the depths, the solid cliff erupted just through the ground by order. The task is complete. The earth under the feet accumulated into a solid stone, but the forces left the hero exhausted to the edge. With a slight movement, the mentor praised Cain with a smile. For his debut, his efforts were really impressed. However, he immediately drew attention to the inequality of stones and the unequal cracks between them, emphasizing that the end result is still far from the ideal. Long reflections did not bring any decisions. To imagine how to change everything seemed impossible. The proposal to draw a line on the ground that would help you imagine the field better, the idea seemed to be shiny. Hardy, without hesitation, grabbed a stick and confidently outlined the boundaries of the future field on the damp earth. The skill of working with the stone allowed this time to carefully and flawlessly place each stone exactly where it had to be. It is easy to imagine when the stones lie down in a flat line, but now the artist deliberately distorted their location. Scattered all over, these cliffs seemed strangely twisted. The hero fades in his reflections as the keeper suddenly calls with an unexpected offer. Mr. Cain's magic was absolutely alien. Neither experience nor secret knowledge. His friends, a little, but all the magicians, every time they repeated the same thing. Both spells and consequences did not differ in at all, as if behind a pattern. None of them, as far as Cain is known, managed to spill on the very nature of magic, not to mention to change it. The idea came up with a good idea, to apply a board instead of a ruler, and immediately got the appropriate size. It doesn't matter what happened around, there was a space for creativity and ingenuity. Only unknown trails open. The hero smiled widely and asked the guard to draw a straight line until he holds the board. The smile touched the mouth when it was noted. Mr. Cain was a true unicum, worthy of admiration. Feeling a new tide of determination, Cain took up the next attempt and focused on the magical power of the stone. The construction of the road to the mansion is coming to the finals. Only the last strokes remained. The body Bodon noted. Guests are eagerly expecting the moment when Mr. Cain will show true skill in the decisive stage. While the security guard, along with the boy, taught stones, the young man was noticing the figure of his father, who was slowly approaching them. Cain described his father's plan. This place will soon become a stone path and invited to join and watch the transformation. Calling stones, the guy created magic again and again, putting power into every new spell. The majestic alley that stretched to the mansion itself was striking. From the capture, his father opened his mouth wide, unable to hide surprise. Imagine only. Mr. Cain's crazy plan is true, and here's the moment for the main street. Fascinated by success, Cain enthusiastically clamses his assistant. The journey led Alice, Garta, and Yurkaya to the horny city, where the girl cautiously asked Cain to stay closer. The labyrinths of the local streets and are fated to get lost. On this day, their goal is to see their own eyes how a new cover is laid on the main street. Only 3 were included in the arrangements. However, Alice was traced to the company. Cain's accusation of fraud was decisively. Then she boldly joined the expedition to the main street. For her father, it was a real surprise that her daughter was able to listen to their plans. Injustice was burning in the girl's soul. Why are Cain only allowed to go to the city? It was very day to day after day, constantly feeling strict parental control. Yet, unexpectedly, his father agreed to bring her with him. Cain was mastered the opposite feelings. She was sorry for her father, who still failed to find a worthy groom for her. The whole city was pierced by a sharp, mixed with aromas of food stench. The passers-by behaved as if it were the most prominent business in the world. But only Cain seemed to be something really strange. Asking Randolph about the width of the main road, the residents learned his assumption, about 7 meters. This proved to be quite accurate observation. However, each subsequent turn to the castle gate gave a new space. The path expanded and eventually reached 8 meters wide. The narrowing of the path that stretched from the gate served at once 2 goals. The movement of uninvited guests was significantly restrained, and at the same time provided a lighter approach to the defenders directly to the gate. The main street was walking down to the gate and stretching almost a whole kilometer. This distance was truly impressive. The width of this road made any attempt to cope with the task for a day or 2 in vain, so there was no idea about the speedy completion. The complete blocking of the movement threatened a real collapse for the local community. The atmosphere here was strikingly different from the one that prevailed in front of the property itself. To consider everything in the rest of the native walls seemed wiser, but suddenly an unexpected idea, to create a model of the town on its own, it escaped. Such a plan stunned both the Guardian and the Buterian, leaving them in a sincere surprise. The assumption of Cain's goal was justified. The boy really needed a layout to carry out his plan. The view from the height was different from the distant contemplation of the town. Here, every street and building became different at the same time. He was fascinated by the desire to get to know the city better. Cain leashably traveled to his streets, looking carefully at every corner. Cain expressed his sincere gratitude to the buttock tank for providing them with a comfortable trip to them, because to overcome this distance would be quite grueling. Instead, Randolph did not consider it a test. There was no doubt that he was called to them soon. Suddenly, a stranger appeared in front of the hero who proudly called herself a Noel, the head of the service department. Her sincerity in her voice and a warm smile immediately melted the ice, and the polite bow to the kin's address made the young man get lost even more. At the moment when a friendly smile flashed on her face, the heart of the guard froze for a moment and then crazy. The barely invisible movement of her hands invited the guests to the conference room, and Gardy expressed her request with warm courtesy. Gardy remained unbroken, so the guy repeated the appeal. Finally, Gardy hurried to apologize, and confessed that he plunged into his own thoughts. In the meantime, Kin said, Alice came out because she had an agreement with Lydia. In the spacious conference room, gathering all those present on himself, Cain bowed politely and greeted the audience friendly, expressing hope for mutually beneficial cooperation. It was at this moment that the barely audible voice of the butler reminded him that the heir of the aristocratic kind does not look like to bow to those who are in charge. Armed with the assumption that Noel prepared a map for them with all the dimensions marked, the girl stretched to him this valuable parchment. In addition, he said, if you connect all these parchments, placing them one by one, a map of the capital will stand before the eyes. The huge size of the map made Cain ask if there would be a more compact format. The girl calmly assured that she has several such specimens, but she noted that these cards are inferior to accuracy. They had to be reduced in half during manufacture, but even such versions remained too large for convenience. Cain began to study one of them carefully, looking at the details. There were several men in Cain's room, announcing a lot of land, just as the owner ordered. Having agreed on the required amount, young Cain sincerely expressed his gratitude to all who joined the case. The secret, why did Mr. Cain needed this plot, Noel did not reveal, but the security guard remained a tireless optimist. He firmly believed that something really amazing would happen soon. Focus on the thoughts. Imagine the model that had to emerge, starting from the drawing of this card, with the ability to mold clay on the table. A striking, detailed model of the whole city has grown. Everyone froze in a delight when the city appeared in a spacious three-dimensional image from Mr. Cain and really awaited miracles. This way allowed one eye to see the whole city, as if to unfold it on his own palm. The spectacle impressed the imagination. The girl was lost in guessing how he managed to achieve this result. He mastered the map in only a few hours, and then so accurately and detailed each street and lane. Enchanted corners that remained out of the traveler's attention of this day came to life in his imagination. But the imaginary landscapes were somewhat far from the real ones. The virtuoso ability to draw in thought has already allowed him to make detailed plans for the future siege of the city. However, if such a feature were learned by influential families or royal dynasties, the consequences could be extremely dangerous. Oro proposed to move the layout to his table. I am convinced that in such an environment it is easier to see the details. The Bogretsky noted that for Mr. Cain, work is done. Only a trifle that he perceives without unnecessary admiration. After all, it all depends on where a person directs his talents. They are able to become a good and a threat. Randall decided to closely follow Mr. Cain. Beware that he would not be in the hands of those who use his abilities in evil intentions. On the opposite side, the central street gently sways down, leading just to the gate. If the ditch was built here, the water would not stagnate, but it would be free to drain into the recess. Cain remembered it. However, for Noel, such explanations seemed quite confusing. Moats always place paths on the side of the rainy or melt water to find a way out and not remain in puddles. The memory of the book was commemorating in memory, and this detail was even more impressed by the girl. It seemed to her that Mr. Cain knew absolutely everything, but the path of knowledge for him has not ended. Hart did not resist, and asked Mr. Cain what benefit he plans to get from the water collected in the ditch. Earlier, wastewater care was placed on sewage. However, there is no such system in this city, so the hero is interested in how the issue of wastewater treatment in modern conditions is solved here. Incredibly surprised, the hero noted that in this city, sewage waste melts freely from the home on the street. From the very thought of such unsanitary on his back, the cold ran. Even more strange that the serious epidemic has not erupted here. It was this circumstance that distorted his impression of the city and made it a great discomfort while walking. Huge cities hid special areas where the water passed through the mysterious mucus sheath, becoming clean. For the majority, this miracle has long been everyday life, and only Cain remained surprised and unsolved. Without waiting for the answers from others, the young man finally dared to turn to Nail, seeking to find out what the true nature of this phenomenon is. Cleaning. A sophisticated water drain system was designed so that it leaves the city boundaries and gathered in a special tank. It was there that the mucus joined the game. It was worth finding the smallest trace of dirt or contamination, as it rose without hesitation and began to act. The newest cleaner instantly absorbed all the impurities, dissolving them without a trace, after which quite clear water remained in the tank. I could not even imagine that this way of cleaning here is used here. The terrain is strikingly not like our world. Such discovery was a real surprise, because the sewage here is not possible to dream. It turns out that mucus is really an ideal for cleanliness in such circumstances. The idea of moving this idea to the hometown and contacting Randolph flashed to create a passage beyond the city walls. Meanwhile, the location of the mucus inside the city remained impossible. The nozzle noted this, emphasizing that everything rests on what construction decision will make Cain. Confident in the realism of such a plan, Cain insisted that the protective structures remain inviolable. After all, such situations have not arisen. He said with interest at what distance from the city walls it is safer to place the tank, considering, despite some pity because of the destruction of faces solely for the sake of their own benefit. Such practice was not surprising here. The local people were used to it. After all, for their defeat, they promised a generous award. If you take the best of the modern order of this world and combine everything with the wisdom gained in the past life, from such an alliance could be born a city that legends dream of. Having completed the discussion of all the details, Cain initiated the transition to the implementation of the project of the plant into life. After prolonged discussions, the final decision stopped on one way of drainage, jointly rainy water drainage and cleaning ponds. Along the two sides of the road, they had to dig ditches with a diameter of about 30 centimeters, with periodic holes for. Looking closely at Alice's work, Lydia was interested in what an unusual bird was depicted in the picture. In response, Alice said with annoyance that it was a wolf in general, and did not hide the surprise. Does the interlocutor see the obvious? Then Lydia turned her gaze to Cain, jokingly asking what he would draw. But the guy just spread his hands, not finding what to answer. No task was unbearable for him until wide cracks appeared between the slabs. It was for this reason that the mother, Lydia, and sister of Alice joined the case. He asked them to invent the original pattern for the pavement. The pace of work was achieved through the support of the relatives who were involved in the case. Through joint efforts, the idea was to paint individual pavement with colorful patterns, so the track became a special charm. Lydia, inspired by the design, asked a little time to weigh all the options and choose the best design. Alice's canvases were amazed at the incredible avant-garde, distinguished by the courage of the shapes and the unknown colors. An unexpectedly sound proposal to cover the main artery of the city only twice a day, on a lunch break, and closer to the evening, a maximum of half an hour. This regime allowed people to plan their business without unnecessary care, and not to suffer from long-term restrictions. Over time, Cain's figure has been increasingly curious to citizens, and local workers were so concerned with his fate that they began to secretly watch the hero secretly, protecting him from foreigners. The speed has become a priority, all for the sake of leaving the inhabitants of peace and not blocking the way to others. Once the keeper finished creating the drawing, the hero puts his hand on the ground. The magical power of the keeper revived the earth, and just in the eyes of the surprised inhabitants a new road launched. The locals have not yet recovered from what they saw, and the cheered boys have already urged the keeper to go forward. Time rose unnoticed as Bill once again showed the road from stone. The Bogretsky himself carefully reminded Mr. Cain that he had passed almost half an hour, and only then did the guy realize how quickly these minutes ran. The confession of a tired traveler was sincerely sounded. The locals said that the trail runs so clearly that even rainy showers do not turn it into a mess, and the legs remain dry and clean. People warmed, the soul warmed up for farewell, and a warm smile illuminated his face. I am happy that the townspeople have appealed to the townspeople, and now their evening was filled with new hobbies. The workflow on the paving arrangement was in full swing. At the same time, the masters were engaged in the drainage system. Meanwhile, Alice and Lydia, having discussed all the details, finally approved the design of the future area. Every 100 meters, the road will cross the paved sidewalks, which are spread over its entire width, littered with colorful floral ornaments. Decorated with lilies, sunflowers, ginkgo, and maple leaves, these aisles give the route a special festive charm and juicy brightness. Sometimes gratitude fell to the man for his tireless work. When Mr. Cain made an effort, others also did not want to graze the rear. The new road, skillfully laid by Mr. Cain, was especially pleasant for all, and she was delighted. The magic of the stone, which was skillfully laid by Mr. Cain, gave birth to a fresh path under his hands, and the new road appeared just in his eyes. Every time the hero appeared in the city, the locals generously treated his kebabs made from their own meat. Work on construction seemed to the hero a real find. It was here that the opportunity to understand the mood and concern of the peasants. From the time of starting the road has already expired a month and a half. The completion of the work brought a real holiday to the village. Joy prevailed around, and every resident sincerely divided this happy uplift. The road, abundantly covered with flowers, ran through the whole village, adding comfort and joy. The merchant realized, now the trade will go much easier. He gratefully squeezed the strong hand of old age, and the summer peasants did not hide the surprise of the warm presentation, which marked the autumn of their lives. The heartfelt words of gratitude were heard from everywhere. Residents surrounded by a magnificent color sincerely welcomed Mr. Cain, thanking for his care. Despite the fact that fate did not give him the title of the chosen hero, true happiness overwhelmed the soul. His magic brought joy to everyone around. The joy swept the hero when he finally managed to obtain the magic of this earth and finish everything to the end. Smiles on the faces of people were like a sunshine that filled the space around amazing warmth. Cain's father looked at the paved street. After paying attention, his father urged everyone to gather and leave lightness, because their father-in-law had to appear soon. The carefree game of cards was absorbed by Cain, Lydia, and Alice when fate prepared a real surprise to them. The news that they could not even think about. Count Shills, a father of Lydia, came from the noble family of the neighboring principality, who was quite unexpectedly a relative for Luke. The meeting with him happened in his early childhood, when only a few years have passed since birth. However, there were no images or impressions from those distant days in memory. It was too small to realize something. There was no real connection between them, leaving the relationship with superficial and fuzzy. The easy movement of the head betrayed the memories of the harshness of this person. But still, his visit was a real surprise. Obviously, word has already informed him of the Potton Street, so this visit is a pleasant surprise. The guy decided to visit personally and ask his father who would be here. No one in San Rose's family boasts such amazing abilities. However, this did not interfere with the case. Local knights were cleverly clearing the surrounding lands from monsters, and from the trophy meat of the demons prepared exquisite dishes. So it was in vain to be too proud of my own family. The warmth of the getcha in her hand brought him reassurance. It is not necessary to make so much effort when there is such an incredible pavement that can impress everyone. Alice engulfed a slight shadow of upset. It was not possible to prepare the taste for my grandfather. The idea flashed. The dishes in San Ruse were surprisingly simple. I used to be satisfied with what I bought in the store, and the home comfort of the kitchen suited me. However, the surrounding people were waiting for real masterpieces on the table. Suddenly, their eyes caught on the hero's book. I clearly remembered every word about growing and seasoning and finally convinced my conclusions. Without a minute, he called his father and mother Lydia. I wanted to entertain my grandfather with a culinary masterpiece from the hero's book. The dish was a real surprise for him. The smile of surprise flashed on the faces of others, which made the hero think, did he have confused something? With delight, his father said that it was a wonderful thought, and Lydia did not hide as a surprise. The boy was really able to read this book. Stunned, Cain and his companion exchanged his eyes. Fresh in Cain's memory broke out how carefully he still hid his strange ability to read the hero's book. However, the echo of joy filled the heart. His unexpected offer was able to call both sincere admiration. No one was surprised by the ease with which the guy flipped through the pages of the book about the hero. Equally every day, his knowledge of abacus or subtleties of arranging paved roads. For Cain, all this remained an echo of his past life. But he did not seek to share such honesty. It was not necessary to delay. It is time to take the case. The promised book about the heroes had to be brought, and Randolph, meanwhile, got the task from his father, to call the cook immediately. The task of the cook was to carefully check the list of seasonings, voiced by Mr. Cain. Cain sought to make sure that he was perfectly versed in all spices that would soon become his daily tool. Having examined the spices and all the ingredients, the guy noticed things well acquainted with past life, but absolutely unattainable in this world. It was because of this small discovery that the hero first won the unique permission to bring a book with him. The real discovery for me were soy sauce and mayonnaise, which managed to find in this world. However, other important ingredients, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, soybean paste, and sweet rice wine, remained inaccessible. So it was not easy to cook your favorite dishes. Familiar vegetables, potatoes, tomatoes, onions, and garlic were adorned on the counter. Potatoes were especially pleased with the hero. She was most sad in this world. Goat oil remained unattainable luxury, and things with milk are even worse. Even when it happened, the taste left much to be desired. However, the choice of meat here was impressive. Among similar delicacies, there was meat of a wild bull, orc, or even a chicken. Cain's interest aroused the strange similarity of the names. This trifle did not come out of the head. The inner voice suggested that it was worth finding out even more, so by weighing all the pros and cons, Cain dared to ask the cook the final question. Presenting a note, he wondered if something of the dishes listed in it was known. The list included potato salad with ham and mayonnaise, pasta salad, onion ham and mayonnaise, meat dish based on whale or priesting meat. Then, thinly sliced, folded. It has never been heard or tasting the taste of one other than the usual first, second, and third courses. Intrigued with novelty, addressed Mr. Randolph whether the same treat was familiar with the question. Randolph immediately remembered one of the meat dishes, but this impressed with the courage of a combination of tastes and unique originality. The boys were instructed to prepare all the dishes from the list, because the only one can try everyone and fairly evaluate their taste before the final verdict. The amazing surprise swept the hero. Is it really possible? Meanwhile, the father was calm and sincerely wondered. Why not? As long as this thought mature, the hero recognized the right of dad. Only his own experience will open the truth, and you will not find out the result until you get into business. Insecurity did he make up and cook? Or can he prepare such a sophisticated dish? However, Cain addressed him with a desperate request, because no one could help. It was worth a little more to ask him with a sincere, touching voice and a child's look, and the self-confident chef almost felt how inferior. Finally, the consent came from his mouth. It was not easy to see it in the face, because the experience of the chef taught to possess emotions. All you have to do is give in. The choice was given to Cain. The young man, full of joy, did not keep his smile and almost jumped out of grip. Holy cook Lloyd skillfully collected all the necessary ingredients. In the kitchen, a real culinary action unfolded. The master boldly experimented, creating a variety of food and improving them with unusual combinations. Cain dreamed of watching this process above all, but the butterflies, following the polite and at the same time decisive tone, delicately but unpaid the guy for the door, motivating his decision to care for his safety. They flashed for several days in a pleasant anticipation. The cook heartily thanked everyone for endurance and patience. Finally, exquisite dishes made according to mysterious recipes from the hero's books, they were on tables, and the owner generously invited everyone to taste these culinary masterpieces. The bright table, which was carried out by numerous delicacies, captured the imagination of Lydia, her father, Cain, and Ellis. The eyes of all ran from what they saw. Lydia's breath was delayed from surprise. She had not yet seen such dishes. Meanwhile, the imagination of Alice immediately captivated the amazing aroma of treats. The father, with a smile, invited the family to taste unusual food. A friendly smile shone on the face of Alice. Choosing the most aptal piece of meat, with warmth in her voice, she wished all a pleasant meal. From the first piece of meat, her eyes lit up. This taste has not yet been felt. The real delight escaped when it confessed. This dish was just unsurpassed. Lydia tasted the treats that were presented on plates with a bizarre, unusual design. Lydia stunned a wonderful egg. Its size impressed the imagination. The father also grabbed the admiration. Under the crust, the meat seemed like a real delicacy, and his aroma was seduced before the first piece. The dishes born in her previous life seemed to be a real luxury and a taste of taste. Confidence finally settled in his heart. Now there is no doubt, he will be able to return his grandfather's health and express gratitude to the chef of the family Lloyd. The joy was overwhelmed by the man, and without hiding emotions, he stated that he considers it a great honor for himself. When thinking about the menu, the character updated the list of dishes: potato salad, delicate pasta salad, meat, thinly sliced, grilled and toasted, juicy pork chops, appetizing vegetable stew, and loose omelet. The original ideas were called heroic recipes. The letter with these recipes artistically unfolded in front of a surprised audience, after which the space was filled with stormy applause. In his glasses, having hit a thoughtful look, the man suddenly remembered. Lydia and her husband did not meet a long time ago. The man came to the man. Their land was called the Land of Paved Roads, although such luxury could still be seen in the heart of the capital. They were amazed at their own success. Everyone sought to solve the mystery of prosperity of their native lands. The long-awaited moment. The grandfather paw is about to appear on the doorstep, and the house was preparing for his meeting. Apparently, Cain did not remember how many times in this month they improved their dishes, trying to make a treat special for the dear guest. With an expression of warm joy, his father confirmed that his grandfather has already gone on the road. The father sincerely expressed his gratitude to the guest for having overcome such a long way to visit them, and his grandfather at that moment called his grandchildren, giving them a caring look. A gentle smile illuminated his face when he paid attention to the grown grandchildren. Cain, according to his grandfather, has already grown from a real young man. Soon, she was about to cross the school threshold for the first time, and now she was striking with the sophisticated manners of a real lady. Her face radiated genuine joy, so she decided to congratulate her grandfather in a special way. She was neatly holding the edges of the dress. The girl bowed politely. The grandchildren did not see their grandfather for so much, and were incredibly sad for him, so they were looking forward to this meeting. Cain was surprised when Alice greeted her grandfather with such sincerity and friendliness. After her, he also had to turn to Lord Frontier. The boy leaned in a respectful bow, reminding that a considerable period of time has fallen from their previous meeting, and now he was 6. The idea that this appeal from Cain did not sound for him for the first time. The same kind of appeal, which often heard from the mouth of Elis when she gently called his grandfather. The inconvenience was overwhelmed by Cain. The confusion hid his thoughts in the shadow of doubts. The behavior seemed false, as if every movement was a false step. Lydia quickly stopped her father, whose unsuccessful jokes only deepened tension. Cain has completely lost the landmarks, not understanding how to proceed. The man responded simply, laughed, and sincerely apologized for his lightness. Noticing that the child became noticeably thinner, the man immediately assured that despite this, the boy's health is in full order. In conclusion, he sincerely thanked Cain for his care and care. The invitation of a man to enter the house was not reminiscent of Cain, a harbinger of something more tremendous than any previous meetings. Crossing the threshold, first of all, he sincerely apologized for his sudden arrival. The local streets were wrapped in the magic of every traveler, and the guests' stories stirred up with the impressions of the story of the guests were stirred up with the unrestrained desire to see this beauty on their own. The awareness of such an honor made Luke shine from happiness. The grandfather, who had not pleased with Lydia for a long time, was at an integrally asked her affairs. The smile shone the girl's face, and, slightly flirtatiously, she replied that it seems that everything seems to be the best. Lydia more and more resembled her mother Aisha, so in the hearts of the Frontifts, a special warmth and comfort were awakened, as if they had returned to their home. She asked where her mother went, because she was convinced that she had to join them this time. As it turned out, this is what they conceived at first. Recent damage to the leg forced her to stay at home, which was a great excitement of Lydia. In the girl's heart there were anxious thoughts about possible danger. Fortunately, the father immediately dispelled her fears, gently explaining, "There is no reason to worry, everything is behind, and everything is well with her." Looking after the garden in the villa, the girl suddenly leaned to the ground, but this did not cause any reasons for anxiety. With optimism on her face, she promised to visit, and gave a sincere laughter for goodbye. Having taken a sip of aromatic tea, Seg was going to discuss the main thing. The path from the humor city to a cozy villa was a real pleasure for the eyes, and again captured an amazing gap between stories and when beauty appears before you. The paved road absorbed most vibrations, allowing the cruise to gain at high speed. The colorful coating not only facilitated the movement, but also gave the streets a special, charming look. Thanks to the ingenuity of Alice and Lydia, a multicolored pavement appeared on the streets, innovations that really affected the movement. Crews and carts now raced everyone with their color stripe, avoiding collisions. One of the locals mentioned this success with gratitude, noting the reduction of accidents due to the original idea of distribution of paths. Due to the fact that the number of pavers here is easy to calculate, the locals are organized independently and thoroughly washed it together. Indeed, there are great changes, and it is not excluded. All this is due to the new pavement, each time more willing to clean the city streets, especially in the shops located along the central road. It is said that once the garbage was carried out without any hesitation in the middle of white, but now everything has become completely different. The rules of the game have changed radically. Gratitude overwhelmed his heart when the residents were so friendly, but the riddle of why they suddenly went to order the streets did not rest. People seemed to seek the flawless look of the pavement, because it was really distinguished by its exquisite beauty. As it turned out later, it was this reason that became a driver. No one wanted the stones over which Mr. Cain worked with such passion, lost his purity. The grandfather fully involved such a development of events, and it was the result that he counted. The stone pavement that stretched under your feet is immediately recognizable. That's how it was in their town, and each of the attendees felt it without any words. Actually, this was precisely the predetermined arrival. The sound of words that allegedly resembled the simple request of the elderly person carried a much deeper implication. Because between the lords, such a conversation is always a special meaning. One reckless phrase can have serious consequences. The dialogue is conducted with the front of the front, which, moreover, is a test. In this situation, every word should be carefully selected. He expresses his opinion honestly and without hesitation, assuring his father, if the assignment sounds, he will make every effort to fulfill his will. A light smile was on his face, and in response, a confident assurance sounded that if things will continue as well as here, he is quite satisfied. The doubt broke into his soul, so he carefully asked Randolph to bring something. The butterflies instantly captured the essence of the request and immediately fulfilled it. Everything turned the best. After all, they are one blood. It is this truth that his father has mastered well. In the family, all the worries and hassles lie on the shoulders not for the benefit of the sake, but for the sense of obligation. The city's model caused a real admiration for his father. It seemed that it was from this layout that began. The first thing that fell into the eye. First, the masters erected a carefully thoughtful miniature, and then began to pave the streets with a pavement. As many as 500 gold coins were assigned to the implementation of this design, the amount exceeding Cain's budget 25 times. He could not imagine what the consequences of such a scope could be. Immediately catching the essence, his father easily put all the details in a holistic picture. Without hesitation, he expressed his desire to place an order immediately, completely lost and stunning everyone around. Carrying alarm in their eyes, the man guessed the possible troubles. But the father answered with confidence. The construction will certainly begin. In the air, the voltage of languages at fair auction was wing, and Cain did not even hope to get such a task so much. However, this was the power of the owner of the borderlands. His will was the law, and his decision did not need any explanation. The more vigorously Grand Paul stared into the amazing model, the more admiration and did not leave the question. Who could create this perfection? Despite all the knowledge gained, this issue inevitably emerged again. The father explained the clear pleasure that this model was created by Cain, using earthly magic. Stunned to the heart, his father exclaimed with delight that it was a real miracle. With a sincere smile, Lydia promised to share all the details for dinner, because you should not rush where every little thing is important. She announced that the guest had already prepared everything. A cozy room was waiting for him, so she suggested a little rest until she made a tour of the house. My father thanked her daughter and gladly adhered to her proposal. The corridors were quietly whispering when Lydia carefully asked her father to ask, "Please show more condescension to the little one." A sincere father-in-law was a frantic mockery, and he did not slowly apologize to his daughter. He frankly acknowledged he stopped driving for a long time because the gaze could not help but note. The boy really made so much effort. He watched with his own eyes that the whole family worked tirelessly for the sake of a common goal. No trifle was left out of his attention. He is happy that all the harmony prevails. His father with a warm pride monitored the hatch growth. Yet, in his voice he was anxiety. It is an exemplary city full of hidden dangers. He carefully asked his daughter whether someone was known to someone else's nature of this place. Sleeping, he noted that only their circle was aware of the existence of this city. He strictly forbade all his relatives to disclose this secret. According to his grandfather, this is not a regular layout of the town. He insisted that he was worth it. Understanding everything to the smallest detail, a girl with a slight bow sincerely thanked her father for his care. After all the issues were gone, the man asked what flavors would wait for them this time for dinner. Last meeting of the treat left pleasant memories, so Lydia, smiling fun, assured that today they also taste something special. The tables covered dishes prepared according to ancient recipes, which were restored by the hero with his grandfather Marvel. Every taste was carried in the past. Lydia, smiling mysteriously, promised to share all the secrets after dinner. The pleasant surprise engulfed it when dishes appeared on the table, only familiar with the pages of books about the legendary characters. It was her that the first to taste one of his favorite dishes. The pupils suddenly expanded, and the passionate exclamation broke out of his mouth. The dish was amazingly delicious. The taste of this dish was struck to the depths of the soul. The hatch willingly give the recipe to everyone. A further dream is to treat this culinary masterpiece and Asia. Warm words of gratitude came from the old man, who smiled, mentally imagining how Asia would inevitably appreciate such a treat. The joy filled the hearts of the cook and his assistants, because their dishes came out just wonderful. After the PA has coped with 3 portions of egg rolls, the conversation about the pavement continued. The day so unnoticed, and he was replaced by the dawn of a new morning. These people with their comrades, with their companions, had every chance of settling for several months until they finished things. At the same time, the grandfather Paul did not stop worrying, doubting the correctness of such a decision. The daughter of her daughter reassured her father, assuring that Cain knew everything. Upon learning of this, the old man blossomed with happiness and invited her to join the family circle. There was so much new that they decided to postpone the changes before the new year, asking them to give them time. The details of the arrangements remained with the local authorities, and after arriving on their lands, to discuss the results of the negotiations. Lydia agreed to this order, and his grandfather looked carefully at Cain. The cunning glitter in the grandfather's eyes flashed with the winking. From now on, everything depended on the boy. In a moment, a fire broke out in the chest of a young man, and a smile blossomed on his face. He promised to support the old man with enthusiasm. When his grandfather left the house after a warm conversation with his family, a feeling of relief was reigned in the house. All as one exhale, as if a heavy stone had come down from his shoulders. He was able to restrain himself, supporting the conversation with dignity. It was for this delicacy that Lydia expressed his gratitude. Cain expressed her complete consent, not only in words. The complex character of his grandfather exhausted him, and after intense minutes the feeling of fatigue covered with a sudden wave of drowsiness. In order to cope with the pavement by design, it was necessary to master the magic even more persistently. But the wisest choice was now resting. A deep dream promised to be the best healing remedy. After the departure of the grandfather, a good opportunity came to return to the archive. The recent days, full of hassle with repair and receiving guests, have finally knocked out the thought of a book about the hero. But when the worries retreated, it is time to catch up. There may be something unknown about the magic of these lands in the pages of that book. The doors opened, and immediately a humor company was visible. The maids, together with Lydia, gathered in the library, immersed in a lively conversation and loud laughter. As soon as Cain appeared on the doorstep, one of the girls with a slight smile reproached him for the lack of knock. The embarrassment immediately affected the face of the young man, and he sincerely apologized for an unexpected invasion. A light smile illuminated her face, and with a gentle request, she asked him to be careful next time. The guy only nodded at this, taking her words. The anticipation of unclear joy swept over Lydia. She caught her heart that something light had happened to her mother. The look of the hero who watched her carefully, he published. He understood everything. From where you do not get, a letter with a joyful news came. This year everyone will gather at home again to celebrate the new year together. The news came from the firstborn Arthur. The letter said that this year Arthur, Benjamin, and Chris would celebrate the new year in their home. Arthur and Chris were heading home, although for their youngest faces remained barely familiar. The memories of the brothers were almost erased because he was still a child. Very soon, all 4 will reunite for the first time in a long time. The capital has already accepted them into their arms, and in the leaf, they described the stone streets that were pleased to walk. Lydia gently held her hand on the boy's hair and said it was really great. Monroe asked with interest when all the brothers were going under one roof. Lydia thought for a moment. Since Chris went to the academy, he never returned home. Almost 3 years have passed. The heart trembled from the anticipation of a new treat, and thoughts already imagined what taste the chef Lloyd could create. The unforgettable evening gave true pleasure, and finally the simple truth was revealed. It is really clear why the father became fascinated by this woman. Sincerity and frankness were impressed with the first word. A warm smile played on his mouth, and the young man noted that he was no less trying to meet and get acquainted with them closer. The book in her hands reminded of a trembling waiting for a meeting with his brothers. But before that dream, there was a little time left. So, allowing you to swim into the background, plunged into the fascinating world of the adventures of a beloved hero. The pages turned one by one in search of the right place, when suddenly at the very end of the book rushed an interesting detail. A few sheets were firmly glued. In the heart of the book there was a hidden cavity in which tiny glasses were hidden. At first, the hero did not pay attention to them, so they turned out to be miniature that it was even difficult to guess their purpose. The glasses flashed bright light, and just in his eyes amazingly adapted to his face, as if created for him. It turned out that this magical thing is inherent in the one who puts them. It was worth trying on glasses as a huge ebook appeared before the eyes, the pages of which were widely expanded. To be surprised, an instruction was opened before her eyes, which not only thanked for the choice of this artifact, but also step-by-step explained how to use unusual glasses properly. The sorcery properties of these glasses allow to multiply the strength of the weakened. In the state of inaction, they retain a compact shape, but you should only use them. Immediately change the size according to the needs of the magician. These glasses have access to unique ability, analysis skills. It was enough to focus on the object, and immediately before the eyes appeared a window that contained detailed information about the selected item. He hoped that these glasses would prove useful for Cain. That is how the instructions were stated. This is what Cain lacked, so now the opportunity for analysis has been opened. With sincere gratitude he accepted the gift of the hero, appreciating his importance. The idea of the presence of magic, which requires the analyze skill, broke out in memory. Understanding this, the hero was convinced that now the status was open for him thanks to his new ability. The first step of this skill opens access to the decomposition of magic into base elements and allows them to be transferred to scrolls or magical gems. However, the path to perfect possession of this skill also requires a separate art of deep analysis. The joy filled it when he realized, learning to analyze, capable of mastering any science. In memory, the idea of the magical formula that once left without attention was erupted. Now it's time to try again. The curiosity took the mountain. It was necessary to find out what abilities were opened with the first level of magic. Among them was the creation of magical ink, which revealed new horizons in front of the sorcerer, allowing to spend 30 magical. The preparation began with a few steps. It was necessary to cook a special charming ink, then carefully examine the spell, outline the magic circle, and carefully apply the scheme on the selected surface. The guy chose the very self-making of ink for the start. The focus enveloped him. He felt a familiar cold glass bottle with ink, concentrating a magical stream around her. Surprisingly, in the next moment, the dreamy thing was already reality in his palms. The bright shade of the bottle captured his imagination, filling the heart with an incomprehensible exultation. However, it was more important to have a more important thing. Before taking the magic circle, it was necessary to investigate the influence of magic itself thoroughly. Many questions were swarmed in his head. What exactly if the analysis of magic seemed to be quite achievable for him? The table with details of the first-level magical circle again flashed before her eyes, reminiscent of elusive answers. So the result was 0. This circle turned out to be almost useless, which was a lot of upset the guy. Ahead of a long period of hard workouts before improved skill will give a tangible result. Suddenly, a mysterious lamp opened. The temptation to touch the secrets of magic played in his eyes, and the thoughts themselves pushed the idea of trying to explore it. He barely touched his lamp as numerous information windows broke out before his eyes. The surprise was so strong that the tongue seemed to grew up to the palate. No sound broke from the mouth. The explosion of colors and signs suddenly filled his gaze. A mysterious analysis of magic unfolded on the screen. The surprise engulfed the hero. He believed that such a level of skill, as the creation of a magical circle, would only be available in the future, when the forces reached a new top. Deciding to take the risk, the young man took advantage of the magic of creation, and in his eyes, instantly broke out a window in the form of a mysterious pentagram. A magical circle for the witchcraft lamp appeared on the floor, and the young man was enthusiastic about exploring his mysterious signs. From the image, the soft radiance of live magic was struck. The young man was surprised. How can something be analyzed if there is already a certain level? In addition, light magic seems to have not even obeyed at any levels. There was also no idea of the mysterious magic of life. So, he decided not to dry his head with unnecessary questions, but to focus on the urgent. It was necessary to arrange a magical circle of light and rewrite it in his department. With a smile on his face, he expressed his readiness and noted that he hopes for a successful result. Simply drawing a magical circle, silence pierced the unexpected hiss, which sounded like a warning from an unknown abyss. The sixth circle slowly dissolved in the air, leaving a barely catchy haze. A bottle of ink, as if by someone's invisible instruction, was overwhelmed by itself, and the dark liquid, pouring into parchment, formed an exact copy of the magical pentagram. From the stick held by the sorcerer, the glow of delight splashed. The sheet was in his hands, and a joyful smile flashed on his face. The idea worked perfectly. Finally, the way to use the magic of this mysterious circle has opened. A thorough study of this mysterious circle revealed its amazing properties. As soon as the palm touched the shimmering lines, and the flow of magic of life was directed inside, the circle came to life, absorbing magic. Analytical data obtained through the efforts of the hero brought unexpected benefit, and Cain has a sense of deep gratitude. It was time to act. Touching the magical circle, he gave the freedom to the streams of magic energy and wasting his breath, waiting for the amazing consequences of this experiment. Touching the pentagram magic, the guy forced her to dissolve in the air. The joy filled him so much that, without holding back the delight, he loudly declared his ability to own the magic of light. In Cain's eyes, another information window emerged, this time with detailed information about the magic of magical circles. It turned out that the new ability is unique. It gives the opportunity to transform the studied magic of the first-level ski. The capture of Cain had no limits when a light magical circle suddenly flashed on the panel. In his thoughts, a bold idea came up. What is the opportunity to store the magical circles created by his own? This opened many ways to collect a variety of charms and later transfer them to their tools to get new, amazing things. The magical world seemed to reveal all his secrets before him. To master almost every famous science of magic, to conquer a fiery sword, or to feel a delicate magical rod in his hand. It was such an incomprehensible force that he lured him to dreams, seeking something unattainable and at the same time fascinating. With every moment, Cain discovered new horizons. Before him, there were boundless opportunities that could lead to even more grand achievements. Kiro could not restrain the dance of a frantic joy. Meanwhile, Alice slowly combed the corridor, puzzled by Cain's disappearance. Her moment was about to come, and the boy is not visible yet. Walking past the library, she paid attention to the open door and peered inside. She froze for a moment. Just in the room stood a young man in the most unexpected pose, which was a lot of impressed by Alice. The impatient views of the observers slid in every movement of the hero. There was a stress of waiting for a magical miracle. Only a short gesture of the guard made everyone carefully retreat. Cain, focusing, revealed his extraordinary abilities, and, like a real sorcerer, caused a stone trail from the ground. The fascinated viewers could not take the look away from this sight. The words of gratitude and admiration for the strength of Cain were leaving from everywhere. Having expressed his sincere gratitude to the guard for his support, Cain decided that the moment had come to the return. However, he did not have time to take a step, as the words of approval were heard. Someone noted his skill. Suddenly, when he heard a familiar timbre, Cain turned embarrassed, looking for his own interlocutor. Ben, a brother who just returned home after a long absence, appeared on the threshold. Cain was a real surprise when a brother appeared on the threshold. He met him with a sincere smile. Benjamin explained that Cain noticed the road to the estate and decided to approach himself to say hello first. At first, Cain was convinced that Ben had come alone, but soon learned he was accompanied by other brothers. 14-year-old Chris Senarose is a third descendant in the family, a young man with great hopes. Arthur Senarose, the eldest of the brothers, had just reached the age of 18, and his presence was already impressed by the leader. Gray smiled warmly Cain, noting how much he grew up during the years of their separation. Gray grew almost a giant in front of his eyes, leveling with his own father. Cain's uncertain appeal to him as a wave of astonishment to Arthur. It seemed that Cain did not really recognize him. Instead of reproaches, the man again called his name, so that he would remember him better. The gesture showed his skinny brother, they say, that's the Chris, and he persistently asked not to forget this name. Cain's warm palm of the great palm of the boy. This touch reminded him of how powerful and wide in Cain's hands. Assuming that for the hero the past remained somewhere in the fog of oblivion, he thought about how rarely he could play himself, worrying about his mother. From now on, everyone was Kin's friends. Chris tightly wrapped his brother, which he was embarrassed. The kin, confused and awkward, muttered that Chris is too close. Arthur strongly closed the topic, noting that Cain, Probably just had something wrong, so it is worth postponing further discussion before returning home. But Chris switched his attention, suddenly turning to Cain with the question of how he was going to get back. In response, Cain calmly assured that Randolph was about to appear. Meanwhile, together with Gardy, the old pavement was faded. To Chris, it seems as soon as they were busy, and a true confusion flashed on his face. Throwing his eye around, Arthur realized, in those years when Cain was as much as he had a sword, he could not yet. Exploring the look of a strong pavement under his feet, it was difficult to understand that it was a work of the hands of the young Cain. Near Benjamin silently clasped a fist, barely holding back emotions. From the mother letter it became known about construction, and the skill to manage magic only mastered last year. However, he has already managed to achieve stunning results. A cunning smile lit up on the face of the fairy when he threw his brother. Cain is not the simple one that can be taken at first glance. After these words, the proposal sounded. He was ready to personally open Cain something unknown. Frost swept the spine when it seemed that the brother still radiates the same demonic essence, without changing at all in all these years. Watching the happiness blossoms around, Arthur plunged into the reflection. When did it happen to meet such living and joyful people for the last time? Thoughts were increasingly returning to his brother, who had long been considered a true genius, and this opinion was divided all around. The praise every time Cain in deep embarrassment. The butterfly when he wink, quit. Another compliment is enough, and Mr. Cain would certainly fall to the floor, begging to leave him finally alone. The nickname Brothers Boyza appeared unexpectedly, but three friends did not comfort it at all. They were asked in one voice that they were no longer called. The joy overwhelmed the hearts of those who waited for the return of Mr. Cain's brothers. Their unity seemed to strengthen even harder. However, no soul in the city even suspected that they had already crossed the threshold of their home. The heartfelt greetings of the locals met them, and in response the travelers waited gladly, feeling the true joy of returning home. The servant respectfully announced the sudden popularity of those guests, so everyone went back to the estate. Cain received a kind invitation to take a seat in a cozy carriage. With a smile on her mouth, the lady hugged the brothers, meeting them with sincere words of joy on the occasion of returning home. Meanwhile, Bogretsky Randolph appealed to Arthur and reported that the owner was already waiting for them in the living room. Alice appeared in front of him. Her face shone with a smile when she sincerely greeted her brother on his return home. The smile shone on Arthur's face when he praised Alice. She grew significantly in a year. These words forced the girl to blossom from joy. Further, Arthur was pleased with the pleasure that a long time has passed since their last meeting, and during this period Alice not only grew, but also became even more attractive. Near the bright colors, Jesus ahead of Alice, forcing her to laugh fun. Mom and her sister glowed with joy, and the brothers did not hide genuine admiration from the meeting. That day to be together felt true happiness for each of them. After meeting their sons, the parents learned that the trip did not take their best, and with warmth they were invited to enjoy the well-deserved rest of this day. The atmosphere of family comfort and benevolence enveloped Cain. When in the conversation he noted the cheerful mood of his father. The young man's heart has warmed up from this sincere, full of joy of the moment. After dinner, his father called three brothers to his office. A serious conversation was waiting for them. Cain, using a rare moment of rest, went to the library, where he plunged into a fascinating story about the legendary hero. Ein's thoughts were confidently circling around the idea. The city is in dire need of sewage system. Without it, it is pointless to talk about the toilets or further expansion of the walls. In the future, another idea was the construction of a public bath that would complete a picture of a real city. Suddenly, a familiar voice heard him in his name. The book immediately lost curiosity, forcing them to look around in search of the one who broke the silence. Finally, his brother Chris went on his trail, and Cain immediately asked what he could come in handy. Gathering with other brothers, Chris suggested going to the room where everyone wanted to see Cain. Chris's vigilant gaze around, and a suspicion was born in his soul. Something unusual happened here? Particularly amazed in the change of Cain's behavior, the one who still passed the library until the 10th road, suddenly plunged into the world of books, first showing a great interest in reading. They hurried to assure that there were no problems, and they were readily promised to put up in the room. Entering the room, Chris calmly declared his brother Arthur, who invited Cain to join their conversation. The hero's surprise was quite clear. Even with each other, The brothers followed the strict rules and never appeared here without an invitation. Their responsibility and respect for their own duties were felt in everything. When the door finally opened, Chris gently apologized for a surprise, and Cain, taking over his manners, also showed his courtesy. Arthur and Benjamin froze in the middle of the room. Their views, insightful and focused, left no chance of evasion. With a smile, Arthur noted the importance of Cain's presence and emphasized that he specifically invited him to talk about their situation. According to Arthur, the moment seemed somewhat premature, but Benjamin still gave his consent. Arthur did not find anything unusual in such behavior, because the guy should already be aware. His genus is a noble origin. 4 young men grew up in the family, so Arthur Krutiv had to express his question openly. Careful to break the tense silence, Arthur asked a direct question. Is the hero a real desire to become a legal heir? Like a lightning pierced, his mind was incredible as a surprise. Not immediately the unexpectedness and bizarre of the question heard came to him. Didamit's son was to become a successor of the title. In other words, the question concerned Cain, the 4th family. Would he agree to accept the inheritance? The unexpected offer stirred Cain, but despite surprise, the answer in his heart has long ripe. He abandoned the inheritance, firmly expressing the unwillingness to inherit the property. The desire to become a support for Brother Arthur was fueled by the care of the welfare of the kingdom. But it was within these limits that his aspiration remained. The older brothers did not break their eyes off the young man, fascinated by his act. A few moments of silence, and from the mouth of Benjamin heard a sincere laughter. Remembering his recent advice, he reminded the orderly that he had already told him before. Authorized, Arthur unconsciously spent his hand on his forehead, hiding confusion. Why do everyone persistently repeat him the same words? Looking at his father, it seems as if the work completely absorbed him. He has no time to reduce his eyes from the stacks of papers. All day passes in anxiety. The brothers, by flashing, barely held back laughter, because they were clear without words. Cain has already joined the company, so Arthur saw the right opportunity to take the initiative again and turn to the brothers. Carefully picking up words, he revealed his plan. Only with the joint efforts, the Gay Rose family will finally be able to gain true well-being. Because this time the support of each of them is needed. After leaning his head in search of support, he addressed the brothers with a sincere request. Chris and Benjamin moved it. With a smile touched their hearts in agreement. Instead, Cain's unexpected appeal was suddenly caught by her brother. The surprise clearly flashed in his eyes. Benjamin was ready, determined to become a support for his family. The confusion flashed in her eyes when he looked at the brothers, and without hesitation, imitated their gesture. The hand lay on the chest. The already familiar words came to life. In response, the warm laughter of the brothers sounded, and Arthur gently ran his hand through his hair as if encouraging and supporting. The celebration remained in the past, giving way to serious plans for the coming evening. There was a conversation about the further development of the region. Arthur initiated the discussion, inviting the brothers to distribute future tasks and clearly outline the areas of responsibility of everyone. Arthur was the first to start a dialogue with Chris, not understanding why this honor fell. Benjamin only sighed with a heavy heart and honestly acknowledged that he could not offer anything. At the same time, the views of the audience unwittingly stopped at Cain. At the time when Cain was out of the house, the family had already dinner. The father sincerely thanked everyone for their efforts and information received, and asked the brothers with a special request. The shades of change in Cain behavior have become obvious after baptism. Whether a new level of skill was sustained, whether life wisdom has done its business, it was only necessary to guess. During training in Benjamin, he undoubtedly captured these new features in his partner. The father instructed the boys to follow Cain throughout his stay here. In addition, he ordered the teaching and good-natured guy to teach the techniques of self-defense. Without hesitation, they accepted the request of their father, because the Forkin was a loved one for them and an invaluable friend. Cain seemed to him a surprisingly interesting boy. So without hesitation, he began to introduce the little one with different types of magic, despite the fact that there were barely 6. Benjamin, immersed in the record of fresh facts, did not break away from the sheet at the desk until silence violated the timid knock on the door. Carefully entered the room for permission to enter the room, hurriedly apologizing and reporting that he has a delay in his brother. In a casual, almost friendly conversation, Cain shared some interesting ideas how to improve his life on the estate. He was really important to his wise advice from Ben's brother. Without hesitation, he immediately suggested that he immediately share in detail. Cain inspired the idea of creating two significant projects at once. In the first place was a public bath, and then a complete sewer system. Until, no one knew how the public bath really looks. The imagination of people was painted only by a giant tub filled with hot water. But Cain immediately dispelled these ideas. The bath is a spacious tank, where it will be convenient to accommodate a dozen visitors at a time. The hero firmly believed that such an institution would not only help the locals maintain cleanliness, but also significantly reduce the incidence rate among residents. This system is a real network of underground channels, which collects rainwater with toilets and directs them to urban subsoil. The wastewater cleansing is outside the city limit, and only then clean water returns back to the river. This approach, in his opinion, had to improve urban hygiene and significantly reduce the incidence rate among residents. Having thought about it, he came to the belief, after the end of the case, people will certainly return joy. The brothers shared the admiration of these ideas, considering them truly brilliant. The hobby was overwhelmed. It is difficult to believe that such an idea could have originated in the head of 6-year-old Benjamin. According to these words, something deeper, unspeakable, and in Cain's chest flashed a cold anxiety. As an excuse, the story came that all this knowledge had drawn solely from illustrations in a book about heroes. He would not even think about such ideas. As it was expected, Benjamin had no reason not to believe him. The book about the hero served not only for Cain, not only a valuable source of knowledge, but also with a brilliant cover, for which he mentally expressed his gratitude. Meanwhile, Benjamin was looking for a way to be a useful new acquaintance, and Cain advised to start with the preparation of the bath. The requirement of Cain to a large amount of hot water was obvious, so if Benjamin was able to use fiery magic for heating, the request to show this skill would be heard immediately. Despite the fact that his brother was unable to ignite a real flame, the ability to manage the temperature of water and objects skillfully helped. Cain considered such assistance quite sufficient. Unbearable curiosity pushed to watch with a wonderful witchcraft. With the intention of using the magical circle, he dreamed of making his own artifact full of power. Suddenly, he grasped for himself what was really capable of when he conquered magical power. Reflections have mastered the twin brother. Will there be any boundary for Cain's inexhaustible imagination? Having mastered the magical circle, he has a lot of incredible tools at disposal. Now everything seems possible. The usefulness of this magical circle Brother Ben felt completely. He was asked about the restriction on his question. This magical circle can only cause a minus of the first level, and launch requires 10 times more than under normal conditions. The logic of this design was struck by Ben, because it was a really powerful energy concentration. Meanwhile, the idea of what magical power can be owned by Cain now barely noticeably forced Ben to shudder. On his back, a cold stream of guessing. The gaze dropped down, but the courage took the mountain. Ben, as a native brother, decided to trust the truth. Recognized confessing in his boundless magical power, he heard only a mysterious smile from Benjamin. A loud laughter escaped from his mouth when he admitted that this guy surprised him again. Gathering with thoughts, he hurried to apologize to his younger brother. He expressed his sincere gratitude for his trust and promised to keep his secret. Such sincerity was very pleased with Cain, and he made this promise without hesitation. The girl's maturity blossomed much faster than Benjamin could assume, so caution became more and more important to him. In order to divert attention and keep control over the conversation, Benjamin directed it to the world of magic, in particular, to the charm, which allows you to control temperature, and explained that such spells are already in the second level of magical skill. Fortunately, they did not face the difficulty that even an experienced magician could scare. It turned out that the spell that controlled the temperature belongs only to the first level of magic. Intrigued, Benjamin asked Cain with a question how he recognizes different types of magical schools. The magic of life was special. Only she opened the art of creating a magical circle. No other witchcraft gave the power to change the temperature, and if someone suddenly used to take advantage of life, the usual heating of water would be enough. This approach was quite impressed by Cain. Detecting the fact that everyone can teach magic of life in any church has become a true discovery for the hero. From now on, there is an opportunity to contact his father and master this skill. Until now, there is no assumption that it is so accessible and simple magic exists in the world. The walls of the church have sheltered the hero, forcing him to think. How much time has passed since the last conversation with his father touched the mysterious magic of life? The magic here was closely intertwined with everyday life, was taken for granted. But only Cain remained in ignorance, as if this wonderful world had bypassed it. A friendly smile shone on Lydia's face, and a leisure gesture forced Cain to cross the threshold. Meanwhile, when the conversation with her father, Alyssa stood nearby. Her presence did not slip away. Lydia suggested meeting the girl before everyone went to church. All the necessary measurements for the road dress, which should appear in the estate of Count Schilda, has already been done. The preparation reached the final stage. It was necessary to add a few final parts. The day of joint purchases left in the soul of the hero a sense of annoyance. Endless fittings and fuss in shops brought him out of balance. Modeling the memories of these unfortunate moments, the steps strongly took him to the church gate. "We are glad to welcome you to the church, Mrs. Alice and Mr. Cain." With a smile, the priest assured that they were always glad here, and it seems that they already guessed their intentions. Turning, he suggested that the baby follow him. He leads to the room in which the majestic statue of the goddess, the Lady of the Goddess. Under the statue was a plate, which the priest called the key to mastering the magic of life. It is thanks to her that the path to mysterious knowledge will open. The clergyman asked the hero to ask what kind of art he wants to master this day. Cain confessed that he was most attracted to the ability to create hot water, but would not refuse and hear about other practical spells, if they are in the priest's arsenal. Completely agreeing with the assumption, the interlocutor heard a new request from Cain, to reveal to him the secrets of the history of magic of life. Nodding as a sign of consent, he spoke restrained and short. Among the magical arts, this phenomenon is known as magic of everyday life. It was once created and generously conveyed to others by the legendary hero who sought to make the magic to make weekdays lighter for everyone, even for those who were previously inaccessible. Rumors spread. This character was the creator of omnipotent magic of life, and only he first had the gift of passing it on to others. It was also told that in the end, the legendary sorcerer had to escape when the crowds from distant lands moved in search of his strength. The critical situation forced the hero to erect a stone slab that opened the way to magic life right in the middle of the church. Thanks to this gift, people were able to accept reward for their own dedication. Understanding that witchcraft, which originally originated in his world shortly after resettlement from Japan, still serves people and facilitates their lives, gave him even more pleasure and warmth in his heart. The hero invented 10 living magicians, but only 9 of them managed to overcome time, one lost in the centuries. The list of varieties of living magic, which prepared the priestess, was impressed with the variety. Among them were light, wind, purification, burning, consecration, cooling, boiling water, increased sound, and even the creation of a magical magic glass. Cain was interested in the proposal to check how much magic could be found only through the easy touch of the plate. The proposal seemed attractive to him, so he did not hesitate. He agreed to try. Stepping forward, the hero put his hands to the plate. It was only necessary to touch the stone, as he flashed a dazzling glow that rushed around a bright wave. It is impossible to notice. The plate shone 4 times, which means Mr. Cain opens a chance to gain 4 unique skills at once. In this situation, hot water, light, and dandruff were the greatest need, and the 4th skill left the stock, to a better moment when life would throw a new challenge. The woman carefully asked not to take her hands from the place where he laid them, and, leaning closer, whispered the incomprehensible words in some other native language. The surprise swept the pitch when the plaque under his fingers suddenly flashed with a bright light, and in a moment it was just as suddenly faded. Confidently mastering the basics of magic, the hero received an offer to test his new abilities later. The surprise and delight broke out in his eyes, and next to him, Alice, inspired by what he saw, also decided to grasp the art of life magic and asked for a priest. He did not even hope that to master new knowledge would be so easy and emotionally that it was a habitual routine without any spark. Hot water allowed him to fill the bath with pleasant warmth, but it was only necessary to think about the future, as in the soul grew arousal. Full of joy for Alice, the guy proudly watched how the girl finally mastered the art of purification and discovered a new, unknown taste of life. The smile illuminated her face when she remembered. If fate allowed to master only one magic, would prefer a completely different one. However, the heart filled with gratitude for a unique opportunity to study both. The words of gratitude Cain priest She saw the girl rapidly running to Cain and repeating his movements. Going down the wide stairs together, Alice reminded her brother that time to go home. The evening had already sneaked unnoticed. However, suddenly the silence cut a woman's voice behind. Someone politely asked them to stop. The young girl, barely holding tears, turned to a stranger with despair, begging for salvation for her wounded brother and promising to pay later. The man with sympathy in his eyes explained that the rules are strict. Assistance is provided only after immediate payment, and he has no right to violate this order. But the girl's request was not silent. Desperately asked at least once to make an exception for their disaster. Alice was surprised and confused. None of the audience even reacted to her words. At that moment, awareness came. It is worth making an exception for her, as everyone will require a special attitude for themselves. The world around dictated its ruthless rules, where no promises or guarantees existed, unlike their past life. Despite Cain's talented capabilities in the art of healing, it was that Alice categorically insisted that he refrained from any action. The awareness of Cain has swept. It is only necessary to cure this man now, and tomorrow the whole crowds, full of faith in a miracle, will reach their door tomorrow. He could not help anyone who needs, but, nevertheless, a sincere desire to support did not release. The anxious expression on Alice's face was clearly testified. To accept and forget not so much for her. Cain's decisive gesture grabbed Alice by his hand, immediately noticing a fresh wound on her palm. In his eyes, he flashed an unknown signal for all those present. Now healing the healing. The young man appealed to the priest to cure his sister Alice with the help of a magical spell. The clergyman agreed without hesitation, assured that he was ready to help Alice. The girl hurriedly tried to stop them, but the hero did not pay attention to her objection, simply stated that he did not notice anything, and asked her to move closer to the light. Carefully approaching the band, the girl felt relieved. The hero immediately took advantage of the healing power and returned her good condition. Having looked at his brother's feet, Alice could not restrain her. No trace of wounds left. With the same ease, as if he had not suffered before, he approached Alice and easily announced, "Her hand is also in full order." With a cunning smile, seeking that he did not notice the passionate looks, the guy confessed. This time he was a little fascinated by the magic. Farewell words and gratitude to the priest for the warmth of this day is the last thing Alice is left before you step home. After a fascinating stop at Harrod's, Alice and his baby returned home. On the way, she threw Cain with a smile that he always manages to invent surprises, even when it is strictly forbidden. The pride of Cain glowed on her face as she smiled at him. Cain's cheerful laughter came in response, and joke, he pleaded, "Just don't tell my mother. Instead, I will share the tangerine with you after lunch." In delight in such a proposal, Alice could not at first believe her happiness. Yes, in a sublime mood, they went home together. On the bed in his own room, Kiro looked into the ceiling, thinking about how to build a bath. Thinking about what to start getting acquainted with the new world. Kiro remembered the feeling, as if he had once visited this bath before his rebirth. First of all, it was necessary to cross the threshold, remove the slippers, carefully leave the clothes in the locker room, and boldly go to the bath itself. Kiro's thoughts ran forward. How to wash now if you usually do not do without a bath and a chair? The work was done as possible, but the young man did not even mention the towels. Did you have an interesting idea? And suddenly the next time you take the risk and invite everyone to the sauna? Having achieved permission from the father, they decided to build a bath near the black entrance to the estate. After Ben's brother went hunting with his father, they decided to start the construction of the bath with the guardian. Cain wondered what size and should be. You will reduce the bathtub, you will not clamp inside, and if you overdo it with size, the darkness with water heating is provided. While these thoughts were spinning in Cain in his head, the guardian suddenly broke the silence, turning to him. Ignorance, what a bath is, was genuinely surprised by the interlocutor, because for a man it was a real mystery. In the memory of Cain, the idea came. In this world, the vast majority used to purify themselves exclusively magical. So many people did not even have an idea of such a phenomenon as the bath. The very appearance of magic could seem to deprive people of the need for baths. But for those who had never met with purification rituals, or were unable to sacrifice something to the church, hygiene issues turned into a real test. The maid announced the children of sleep time, gently reminding the need to spend the evening cleansing. The light wave of magic touched the palm of the Cain, and the impurities disappeared without a trace. In a moment, the magic also swept the hands of Alice, leaving them perfectly clean. The magic really washed away only external dirt, but the exhaustion remained inside without disappearing. Therefore, the hero decided to hold back a little more, hoping to wait for a dreamy warm bath. Only hot water could give a real rest and relieve the stress that had accumulated after a grueling day. That is why there was a need to erect a bath. And the hero began to explain to the guard what was the true essence of a real bath. After a detailed explanation, everything came into place. The guard finally realized that it was a mysterious structure. It was found that the bath should be erected spacious in order to fit 3 adults freely. After all, when the hostess is moving to washing, the maids certainly make her company, and all together dive into a warm bath. The memory of this was completely weathered from her memory, while the guardian had already carefully painted this picture in his imagination. Trying to drive away unwanted thoughts, Cain wondered. The room should be spacious, such that 3 adults easily accommodate it. The hero did not forget about the importance of the window, so he asked the guardian to ask whether at least one would be able to establish. Not knowing this, the hero decided to seek wise advice to Mr. Randolph. In addition to the window, it is time to take care of the roof. The doubts were, what to create the first. A solid stone wall or immediately invent it with the holes. The memory suggested that you remember the past experience when I had to cut the cavities on the finished surface with magic. There are many options in the head, because without a thoughtful plan and a step, it will be possible. No bath will build itself. Once Hutton had already tried to connect the stone walls, but the failure was beaten. One wall stubbornly did not want to stay on the other. Now, having learned from the mistakes, he took care of the case, carefully weighed every step before laying the first stone. It was just a minute as the security guard appeared again, thanking Cain for endurance. Mr. Randolph and Mrs. Knoll went next to him. She was invited, because she was accidentally in the house. The joy of the girl's face shone as she saw Cain, and her greetings sounded especially warm. Upon learning of his need for help, the girl did not slow down and immediately appeared. And the hero met her with a warm smile, making it clear that she was genuinely happy to see her. Asked what kind of window was about, he heard in response from the guy that the window serves as a ventilation. It is not intended for full opening, but also completely invisible from the street. It was necessary to make a lot of effort to put the bottom frame of the window outside. The Boretsky assured that the next day the windows would appear in the house. Additionally, the request was to prepare a few more windows of various shapes and sizes. Waiting for their delivery, he suggested that Knoll join the work on the construction of the bath. The arrangement of the complex involves the presence of a bath, shower, and spacious dressing room. The dressing room is designed for 3 adults and is equipped with a special area for storage of hot water stocks. The bunch expected that the niches cut in the walls would help you find more space, but it was much more complicated to equip the internal partitions or install a bath than it seemed at first. The girl asked the question, should all this work really lie on his shoulders and magical abilities? The magic allowed to create such miracles that it would not be possible to make them without magic. Although everything else is under the power of the skilled hands of guild masters, masons, or carpenters. These words, like a ray of light, reached Cain's heart, and he, without hesitation, got it. That's how everything happened. Not every business could be entrusted with magic. It was enough to use magic to erect strong walls and arrange a bath. And the rest, the roof and all the small details, were already built on their own. In gratitude, the young man thanked Knoll for his support, and she, almost solemnly bowing her head, answered him with a respectful bow. Inside, the girl was overwhelmed by genuine joy. She was extremely pleased to come in handy. So, inspiring, he went to business again, and using the magic walls of the stone wall, erected not only the roof, but also the rest of the building. The creation of the guy caused admirable glances at all around. Without stopping on the achieved, the young man began to cut the openings for the door and windows, continuing to impress with his skill. First of all, there was a need to carefully calculate the volume of magical energy. Only accuracy will ensure the homogeneity of the material. Next, it was to be divided into several small portions. Frequent use will be excluded for removal, so the guy formed holes for future windows in the wall. The capture of Tyler had no limits. The sight that faced the eyes was really impressed. But he just smiled, they say. The beauty here is undeniable. The interested Guardy asked how they planned to arrange the floor. Mr. Cain said that they would spread low stone paving, and the bath will be installed with a slight slope so that the water flows easily. He invited everyone to come closer to evaluate the future structure with his own eyes. The stone wall will serve as an ideal base. It will be laid out with a paving floor with a barely noticeable slope. Mr. Cain prevails that the work goes perfectly. The design has already acquired the desired outlines, although there are still small cracks. In addition, it is necessary to grind the surface a little. To the surprise of the attendees, the man was already fully prepared for a new stage. His decision was allowed to significantly simplify and accelerate the construction process. The next goal was the bath. Cain's focus was so strong that even the bathroom seemed to feel the power of his desire. Using the magic of the stone wall and applying the clearing, finally managed to reach the desired. The bath was filled up. Finally, Cain covered Cain with a thick layer of clay. It was enough to only put hot water into the bath. Suddenly, the young man realized that he had completely forgotten about the organization of water supply, while Noel continued to be ignored about the true cause of difficulties. The inconvenience engulfed him. The confusion prevailed before the mysterious water supply. The hut grew up in a new place, closer to the well. But now Noel has the task of carrying water. There was not enough experience in such cases, so he turned to Cain on the advice. There is an explanation. A water supply is a pipe that is constantly moving water. Every day the buckets to the toilet were too exhausting, so the idea came up to draw a pipe just from a well to destination. Now the water will flow right here. It will relieve the hassle with wearing water, retain strength, and greatly simplify work. Clay pipes are made of selected material, and over time they are unnoticed with the ground. Such a strange phenomenon was a great impressed by everyone who witnessed him. Suddenly, Cain was illuminated. It is worth using the soil press. It will be able to compact and align the ground, turning the surface into a flat, solid base. Due to this, the earth strengthened to the state of real concrete, which allowed to move on. Cain, turning to the team, announced that they could not do without their support now. Through Randolph Pedro, he handed over to his father the news of the intention to lay a water supply from a well to a bath. Waiting for approval, he took into account the case. However, there were several annoying mistakes during the work. Fasting how to cope with the slope, he offered an effective decision and reached for help. With their coordinated work, their group really dropped on an experienced team of craftsmen. Although this case takes them a lot of time, the order is done without much difficulty. They expressed their sincere gratitude to the boys for their support, and the atmosphere was filled with joy. Everyone was overwhelmed by the pride that it was possible to put Mr. Cain's shoulder. Completed construction brought him true joy, and fatigue responded pleasantly in his body. Filling the bath with water seemed like the last step, so Cain decided to first pour only half. However, the task was not easy. Joint efforts were needed. True teamwork began. Each in turn pumped water, overcoming fatigue until the bath was filled in half. Significantly exhausted travelers stopped for a short vacation, and Cain, using magic, made simple chairs for comrades. It is time to discuss how to organize joint work daily and support the team. The last touches of work have already come to an end. The hero gently poured boiling water to reach the perfect water temperature. Meanwhile, the butter, noticing that the bath was already half filled, he turned to Mr. Cain with interest to ask his further intentions. On this, Cain just smiled and suggested simply watching, and then she used to apply magic, warming the water to the desired state. The joy filled it, because such a device happened for the first time, and in use it was surprisingly convenient. Handing on the water and feeling the temperature, he decided to add some more warmth. Everything finally looked flawless. In the bath, the water heated to a pleasant temperature gently filled the space, reaching about 3/4 of height, and then stopped its rapid lift. The task was perfectly. The hero immediately felt that the air became exactly as it should. Friends encouraged the security guard, Noel and Randolph, personally to make the perfect temperature. The unfamiliar boil opened before him for the first time, and the security guard immediately noted, "Water seems to be boiling with hot steam." However, apparently, such a surprise is natural for anyone who is for the first time in such an unusual bath. Water wrapped the body with gentle heat, just what was needed for complete relaxation. Hardy immediately felt, in such pleasure, you could carry out an eternity. Cain suggested that everyone invite everyone at this moment. Hardly stepping into hot water, Fatiha felt an unexpected wave of grip. a pleasant warmth of the feet, as if hugging them with special tenderness. The guard could not help but notice how a lightweight smile appeared on her face. Bathing immediately relieved the tension, allowing her to relax. A joyful smile shone on his face. Obviously, everyone appealed to his efforts. Confidence is strengthened. Everyone will be pleased to plunge into this healing by. The sudden outbreak in memory forced Cain to grasp his head. He released from the sight that water should be taken care of. The sudden shadow of sadness swept it, and the audience felt immediately that something was wrong. Having sincerely apologized, the heroic guy appealed to others to help create a drain. He was mildly reminded that it is not necessary to apologize so often, and even a gloomy security guard joined the common cause. They completed the work when the last rays of the sun have already left the horizon, giving way to the mysterious twilight, which gently wrapped around the whole world. Preparation was completed, and the exhaustion enveloped Cain so much that the only dream was to plunge into a hot bath. However, even such a simple step seemed to be an almost unbearable mission, because in this imperfect world, even a rest demanded an overgrowth. Despite all the circumstances, Cain declined adamantly. Tomorrow he will certainly plunge into the luxury of a hot bath. Kina had the idea to invite others to join the tomorrows steamed in the bath. The general consent prevailed among the audience, after which the girl noted that today the adventures were concerned. It was at this moment that the buttermilk delicately emphasized Mr. Cain, which is time to sit down for dinner. A strange silence prevailed at the dining table. Everyone had their thoughts. Chris with Arthur paid his eyes down, upset and thoughtful, and around the majors a tension that is launched only in family circles during difficult conversations. The confused, Cain wondered how his brothers could rake entire stacks of documents. The real price of Lord's responsibilities became a stunning discovery. The local work was much more difficult than he imagined. Arthur with Chris focused, encouraging each other's views. Arthur noted that today it seemed surprisingly easy. There was almost no business. Chris jokingly quit that when a girl appeared, he would have to control everything carefully. Lydia thoughtfully watched the boys, wondering their fatigue and exhausted face. For example, Alice, who was always full of energy. Cain said, saying, "The wonder," as she manages to go down even during her studies. In today's bypass, Cain accidentally listened to a dissatisfied grunt. People complained that they were forced to visit dozens of shops without any rest. Capid with sympathy, Keeney decides to take care of them. He is in a hurry to equip the bathroom so that the exhausted residents can rest properly. The morning of Mr. Can's courtyard was filled with homon. Workers were already approaching his home. At the invitation of the young man responded masters, representatives of the Guild of Masons, and Tesslers. Mr. Cana wished them good morning. Young men were instructed to build a new roof for the bath, as well as mount doors and windows. In addition to external work, they also had the responsibility to repair the bathroom indoors. Looking at the tasks front, Cain wondered how long it would take to perform them. The man responded with a smile, promising to finish before the sunset. From such confidence, Cain did not hide admiration. The workers quickly rolled the wood with gypsum and did not delay. Cain visited the master several times, adding fresh guidelines and adjustments each time. The roof frame stood majestically over the future dwelling, and watching a new home step by step comes to life brought the hero a true admiration. Mr. Cain's permission was asked unexpectedly, giving the hero to the idea of possible negligence or miss in his work. However, the assumption was not confirmed. Instead of reproach, praise came. A man noted a rare skill in creating a room with such a reliable basis. The only remark concerned the coolness that prevailed in the bathroom. The idea of arranging in the locker house was surprised by the hero, because he has not happened to him yet. However, the very idea of a warm, cozy room where you do not have to tremble after bathing looked just wonderful. The cold atmosphere made itself known, and such an innovation could be a real salvation. They were asked to install another furnace. The worker, without delay, promised that they were organized in the shortest possible time. Anxiety overshadowed Cain. The imagination drew too high price. So, carefully assumed that if the cost is excessive, let them describe the design and already build the stove. In response, the man with a warm smile assured, "There is no reason to worry, because the price will be more than acceptable." A request was made to build a fence around the kitchen. Cain was thinking to build a reliable stone fence that would protect the house from any troubles. Cain legends have long been spreading among people, but every time they paved compared to his new wonders, Quick swing, and the magical power forced an elegant plaster to dry instantly. Following one by one, weird chairs arose, and even gorgeous baths grew up just before their eyes, as if they were presented with the heavens themselves. Amazing combination of agility and coordination. Workers easily cope with many tasks at once. One of the young men with a smile threw, "There's nothing difficult for them." In the evening, in the glow of the orange sun, the roof glowed with perfectness. The work was completed in time, and until the last board. With a certain movement, wiping his sweat out of his forehead, sighed with relief, and announced, now everything was prepared. The room was a hot dream. It seemed that it became a real bath, unrecognizable by changing its former appearance. One of the guests turned to Cain with a greeting, struck by the sight of the magic of the earth. The admiration of others fully met his expectations, but the guy could not fully understand why everyone around him was so delighted, because he was only given the faithful support of friends. A sincere smile blossomed on his face, and the words of gratitude were heard for all those present. The most joint efforts managed to create a real best bath. Filled with the joy of Cain, after completing all the things, began to prepare for today's journey. On the towel, carefully laid out the best soap, picked up tidy clothes and all the necessary bathing things. Additionally, the room was filled with a soft glow of magic lamps that Cain created using magic of light. Meanwhile, the owner explained the servants in detail the rules for using the bathroom. Lydia, cautiously approaching Cain, smiled, and quietly noted that she had already had time to understand everything through the explanation of the maids. Lydia enveloped as she saw the beauty she managed to create Randolph. Confessing that all this was achieved only through Cain's advice and magic, he has caused a girl's sincere admiration. However, the guy, not trying to take all the honors, only modestly noted, true success became possible only through the efforts of anyone who joined the case. Cain, without any hesitation, agreed to take part in a walk in the bath, openly showing his commitment to this idea. But unexpectedly, Alice intervened in the discussion. With a fire in her eyes, she strongly announced that she also seeking to join the company. Lydia reported that they would go there together. 3. There were no doubts on the face of the hero at first. He gave consent quickly and confidently. But in a moment, having realized the content of the card, his cheeks flooded with a bright blush, and he was confused. The uncertainty was suddenly captured, and now, uncertain whether he really understood everything properly, the hero decided to clarify at Lydia again.